Chapter 691. In the sky, Jiang Xiu was as huge as an ancient god. As Jiang Xiu looked back coldly, the huge shadow behind him did the same. It was hard to imagine a face tens of thousands of meters long turning back in the sky. That power was too shocking. He smiled contemptuously. A mere Taihua sect dares to bully my Tianqing school when I'm not here? He turned around and took a step forward. It was an ordinary step, but the huge shadow behind him took a step forward. Although it was stepping in the sky, it shook the whole world. The airflow surged, the clouds fluttered, and the rocks cracked. Die. A silver blade shot out from Jiang Xiu's fingertip and flashed across the sky. No one could imagine the speed of this blade, let alone the power of this blade. A 3-inch bright knife was reflected in Madame Ji's eyes. That small flying knife shot towards her at an incredible speed. Before she could react, she felt a sharp pain all over her body. Madam. Xiaoxi. Madame Ji's body exploded as if it had been smashed by a cannon. Then, a flying dagger flashed past her and rushed into the distance, destroying her into a pile of ashes. Instant kill. I didn't kill you last time. This time, I'll kill you thoroughly. There were only 12 immortal kings left. Jiang Luoxia roared angrily. Jiang Luoxia, you dare to kill my daughter? Jiang Xiu's eyes were cold as he smiled coldly. This was just the beginning. He took a second step. Fire palm 6 directions. Jiang Xiu casually waved his hand and sent out a palm. Jiang Yan saw a huge fiery red palm crushing down, bringing with it an incomparably terrifying heat and power. It was incomparably fast, and the female genius was actually smashed into a meat patty on the spot. There were only 11 immortal kings left. The third step. Moon hook refinement. Jiang Xiu stretched out his hand and moved his fingers. The body of Taihua sect's chief elder, Yin Chuanhai, was strangely twisted and exploded in the air like a clay figurine. There were only 10 immortal kings left. The fourth step. Facing the headmaster of the Taihua sect who was rushing towards him, Jiang Xiu actually killed one person with each step he took. His secret techniques were endless and dazzling. He either slapped them to death, pinched them to death, beheaded them to death, or blew them to death. Immortal kings fell one after another, their lives being cut away like weeds on the ground. He was dumbfounded. Dumbfounded. The disciples of the Taihua sect at the back were all grief-stricken as they witnessed this scene. These were all elders of the sect, immortal kings of the sect. Since when were immortal kings as worthless as they were on the streets? Jiang Shitua's entire body was trembling with anger and fear. These 9 immortal kings of the Taihua sect were the foundation of the Taihua sect. They were the sect's greatest resource and core. Now that they were all slaughtered, would the Taihua sect still be the Taihua sect? No longer. He was the only immortal king left. What Taihua sect? Even an ordinary mid-tier sect is stronger than Taihua sect. Jiang Shitua, this is what you get for plotting against me, Jiang Luoxia. Jiang Xiu's eyes were cold, and his expression was indifferent. He looked at the dead people and the cruel spells that were still scattered in the sky, like an ancient god looking at ants on the ground. Jiang Shitua's face was ashen. His hatred was monstrous. He kept urging the giant phantom of a bull's head to descend from the sky. Oh my God! The elder of the Jie sect, who had witnessed all this from the distant mountains, held his breath for a long time before spitting out this sentence. Too shocking, too terrifying. Immortal kings were so powerful that they were almost unkillable. It was said that only 4 immortal kings could kill them. But to Jiang Luoxia, killing them was like cutting grass. This is Jiang Luoxia's true face? He had thought about it before. The Jie sect would rather die than become enemies with Jiang Luoxia. Ha 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 ha. Hua Luiying's laughter rang out. You're in big trouble. The giant phantom of a bull's skull finally descended. Jiang Xiu's figure moved. Then, like a totem, the phantom of a bull's skull rushed over. At the moment of contact, Jiang Xiu felt a strong devouring power. This wasn't the first time Jiang Xiu faced this kind of power. In the past, he had the Tianheng token in his hand, which could resist strange Dharma weapons with soul attacks. But this time he could only take it head-on. Almost at the same time, several clouds of black gas wrapped around Jiang Xiu. Then black cloth wrapped around his body. The more he struggled, the tighter it wrapped around him. In the end, his body exploded and he died. When he looked up, the Ji Daozong sword art and Yan Longyue's Dharma weapon also attacked. Victory or defeat would be decided in this instant. Jiang Luoxia died. Jiang Xiu's eyes exploded with countless bolts of lightning. His body suddenly exploded. Cracks appeared on the phantom of the bull's skull. In an instant, it was full of cracks and exploded. At the same time, the black robe that wrapped around Jiang Xiu couldn't resist Jiang Xiu's full power. The power of the second primordial spirit was also unleashed to the extreme. The black cloth exploded into pieces. When he looked up, the two swords had already attacked in front of him. Ding! His left and right hands exerted a strong force. A grayish-white light appeared on his arms. It was so bright that it was almost transparent. The two flying swords were fixed in the void. Then, Jiang Xiu's left and right hands formed strange and different seals. The heavens question talisman scattered. Wind in his left hand and fire in his right. They formed a heavens question talisman. Seal. As Jiang Xiu's spiritual power continued to increase, the two flying swords in the void vibrated and buzzed. The condensed sword bodies also gradually dimmed. With a bang, the flying swords shattered into fine light sand and drifted between heaven and earth. The four lost their voices. All of this seemed to take a long time, but it was all in an instant. So many immortal kings had been killed, and so much of his energy had been drained. The two treasures had trapped him on the spot, and the most powerful destruction sword essence had been combined with Lan Longyue's talisman treasure sword. Since that was the case, he had easily defeated them. At this moment, they felt like they weren't facing a divine king, but a divine emperor. They didn't know that Jiang Xiu's original cultivation was higher than theirs. What really made Jiang Xiu so abnormal was his Protasa's second primordial spirit, which increased his power by hundreds or thousands of times. In other words, Jiang Xiu's power was hundreds or thousands of times higher than theirs. In the face of such a huge gap, they could only be crushed by Jiang Xiu. What do you think? The faces of the four were ashen. They knew that the situation was hopeless. Run! This was the only thought left in his mind. In terms of running away, of course, Ji Daozong was number one. When this guy saw that something was wrong, he didn't care if it was his alliance or his wife's master. Want to run? Jiang Xiu's figure flashed, and the long saber in his hand slashed out fiercely. The light left his body and instantly pierced through Ji Daozong's body. No, don't kill me. Ji Daozong couldn't care less about his injuries. Black blood flowed out of his mouth. Attract! Jiang Xiu chanted an incantation and pointed at Ji Daozong. Ji Daozong was pulled by a force and directly thrown onto the altar. The samurai black umbrella in the sky lost control of its power, and could no longer bind the 8 elders. It floated down. Jian Yi, I'll leave them to you. I won't kill them for now. Master has something to ask. Yes. Jian Yi bowed, and excitement and vitality appeared on his weary face. Then Jiang Xiu chased after the other 3. In Jiang Xiu's opinion, the corpse god Taoist was the strongest. Moreover, during their first exchange, Jiang Xiu's yin-yang split sword had forced his opponent back. However, he had not been able to exert any force. In other words, he had not been able to injure the corpse god at all. He had to gnaw on this tough bone first. Moreover, among so many people who had betrayed him, the one he couldn't understand the most was the corpse god. Suck. After all, when the corpse god Taoist was in front of him, he was surrounded by a mass of black death qi. Jiang Xiu opened his mouth and sucked the black death qi into his mouth. The corpse god Taoist, who was hiding in the black death qi, seemed to be pulled back by someone. Not only was he unable to move forward, he was pulled back. In the end, he had no choice but to give up. Why? Jiang Xiu's voice sounded. I can understand why Ji Daozong betrayed me. He wanted to take my position and become the sect master of Tianqing school. But why did you betray me? What benefits did you get? The corpse god said. I didn't get any benefits. Then why did you? A hint of sadness appeared on the Taoist corpse god's half-human, half-ghost face. A woman asked me to do this. A woman, and you listened to her? The corpse god's eyes dimmed even more. A trace of pain flashed through them. She knew how to kill me. She threatened me to tell the world. If I told the world, I would be useless. Anyone could kill me. I had no choice. Chapter 692. Jiang Xiu pondered and asked tentatively, "So if I don't know the method, I can't kill you. At most, I can only imprison you." The corpse god nodded. Yes, there were many opinions on whether the corpse god was a human, a spirit, or an immortal. Some said that he was just a mass of death. Jiang Xiu didn't know either. It was hard to know how to kill a person without flesh and blood. Even the knowledgeable Jiang Xiu didn't know, so how could that woman know? Who? Which woman? The corpse god said. The courtesan called Su Shaowan, and you called her Ran Ran. Even though Jiang Xiu had already guessed this, he still felt a chill in his heart when he heard it. Only a goddess would know how to kill the zombie god. Only a goddess would know so many secrets that no one else knew. So you betrayed me? The corpse god didn't say anything. At this moment, a piece of black cloth flew past. It was the piece of black cloth that the corpse god Taoist had shattered. Jiang Xiu didn't really know where this piece of black cloth came from, but he heard that it was the burial cloth of the Fuhua clan. He grabbed the black cloth and chanted an incantation. He wrapped it in front of him. The black cloth was already torn and had lost its original divine function, but its material was still there. The Taoist corpse god was trapped inside the cloth. Then the cloth closed around the opening of the cloth, trapping the Taoist corpse god inside. The Taoist corpse god was constantly chanting an incantation. A golden seal word appeared on the black cloth. Then the word gradually disappeared. He turned and chased after Jiang Shitua. Jiang Shitua, do you still want to run? What's the point of living like this? 2 of the Taihua sect's elders died in the battle with the Heaven Motion sect. However, Jiang Shitua was the one who wanted to get rid of them. He was an ambitious schemer of the sect. Today 9 of them died in one fell swoop. All the immortal kings of the sect were dead, and he was the only one left. The Taihua sect was no longer as impressive as it looked. Moreover, the Taihua sect's most precious treasure had been shattered by Jiang Xiu. Jiang Luoxia. Jiang Shitua was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Jiang Xiu was too strong, so strong that it was beyond their imagination. He couldn't understand how a dead person could become so strong in just a few short decades after cultivating his soul. Don't go too far. Jiang Xiu's cold voice rang in his ears. You should have known that this day would come when you set me up. Those who offend me, Jiang Luoxia, will never have a good ending. Tell me, why did you do that back then? Jiang Shitua knew that he wasn't Jiang Xiu's opponent, and that he couldn't escape. He said helplessly, "It was a woman. She said that she had a way to make my Taihua sect surpass Tianqing school." Jiang Xiu frowned. "That woman?" Jiang Shitua said. "The courtesan named Su Shaowan. But you seem to call her Ran Ran." "Her again." Jiang Xiu said. "As long as I, Jiang Luoxia, am alive, your Taihua sect will never surpass my Tianqing school. So you want me to die?" Jiang Shitua said. "She gave me an idea. And it came true." It seemed that the Ji Taoist sect marrying Jiang Shitua's descendant wasn't their original idea. It was the goddess behind it. "Jiang Luoxia, I was instigated. Let me go." Jiang Xiu's eyes were as cold as ice. "Let you go? If it weren't for you, my Tianqing school wouldn't have suffered so much. If it weren't for you, my Jiang Luoxia disciples wouldn't have been harmed. Out of so many people, only Jian Yi was left. She even suffered unimaginable pain. Go down and be buried with her." Jiang Shitua saw that something was wrong. After all, he was an overlord for many years. He wouldn't just wait for death. He immediately stabbed his sword towards Jiang Xiu. Earlier, he had already made hand seals behind his back. He had been planning this for a long time. "Umph." Jiang Xiu snorted coldly. Under Jiang Shitua's horrified gaze, Jiang Xiu's sword technique arrived first. Not only did it instantly destroy his sword aura, but it also pierced his throat. With a whoosh, the gray sword aura shone brightly and disappeared into the distance. Jiang Shitua clutched his throat. He wanted to speak, but only gurgling sounds came out of his mouth. Blood flowed out from between his fingers. There was also a gray light shining out. When he was answering the question, Jiang Xiu had already noticed that Jiang Shitua wouldn't accept his fate, and would definitely launch a sneak attack. Thus he secretly made hand seals. Before Jiang Shitua's sword technique could fully form, it was destroyed by Jiang Xiu's sword technique. Boom! Jiang Shitua's entire body exploded. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. An immortal king of a generation, the sect master of Taihua sect, had fallen. And after his death, all the immortal kings of the Taihua sect were wiped out. Although there were still some grand celestial immortals, the Taihua sect didn't have that kind of strength. Taking over the resources of a large sect would definitely bring about a calamity. Their destruction was foreseeable. Dead. The elder of the world sect on the distant mountainside when he saw this scene. Taihua sect has been annihilated. If Jiang Shitua had known that he would end up like this, he definitely wouldn't have dared to offend Jiang Luoxia. After all, he wasn't the one who created the destroyed Taihua sect. He was just a speck in the ocean of tens of thousands of years of inheritance. He couldn't bear the consequences of such a thing. He felt ashamed to face the ancestors of the Taihua sect. There was still one more. Dragon Moon. After wasting some time here, it was more troublesome for Jiang Xiu to catch up. However, in this world, animals would run home. So would humans. He chose the direction of Tsang continent. Do you think you can still escape? You can't escape the temple. Dragon Moon's expression changed. He didn't expect Jiang Xiu to catch up to him in such a short time after chasing the other two. He felt despair. The current Jiang Luoxia was too strong. He was unbelievably strong. With such a huge difference in strength, everything he did was futile. Jiang Ge, I was wrong in the past. But on account of our friendship, please spare me. Jiang Xiu said. Why did you harm me? What good does it do you? Dragon Moon sighed and didn't say anything. Jiang Xiu frowned. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. No, I'll say it. Dragon Moon was shocked. He knew Jiang Luoxia's temper. This person was decisive and would never bargain with others. Moreover, he wouldn't be moved by force or persuasion. A woman told me that my son was indeed killed by you. Jiang Xiu said. What? Didn't you figure out what happened that year? Dragon Moon said. She showed me some evidence. Then Jiang Xiu frowned. Then you believed her? Lan Longyue nodded. Who? Although Jiang Xiu had already guessed it, he still didn't give up and asked to avoid any accidents. That courtesan called Su Shaoan. Jiang Xiu sighed. It was her again. A sentence that made Jiang Xiu not know whether to laugh or cry sounded in his ears. Dragon Moon asked. Did you kill my son? Ha ha ha. Jiang Xiu was so angry that he laughed. You idiot. Since you suspect that I killed your son, why don't you take revenge on me face to face? Dragon Moon said. In the past, I could beat you and chase you down. But now, not to mention that I can't beat you, the Tianqing school behind you is not something I can offend. The muscles on Jiang Xiu's face twitched. So he used a dirty trick? Stupid. A gray sword light flashed through Dragon Moon's body. From the mountain in the distance, it exploded. A red line appeared in the middle of his body. It was blood that seeped out. He didn't even have time to react. I thought you really treated me as a friend. Dragon Moon's body fell down. Jiang Xiu didn't look at him again, and returned to the heavens altar. As soon as he arrived, the Tianqing school shouted in unison, Greetings, Sect Master! Greetings, Sect Master! Hundreds of thousands of people shouted in unison, full of excitement and excitement. The current sect master was stronger and scarier than before. He was back. Jiang Xiu walked over step by step, but his gaze was fixed on Ji Daozong on the heavens altar. Ji Daozong's head was bowed as if he had lost his parents. Ha ha! Hua Luiying's laughter rang out again. Ji Daozong, you're out of luck. Ji Daozong's previous words could be treated as obscenities, but now they were real. He was really out of luck. No, it wasn't as simple as that. He was finished. His face was pale without a trace of blood. Chapter 693. Back then, those who had plotted against Jiang Luoxia had been killed, and those who should have been punished had been dealt with. The only one left was Ji Daozong. With Jiang Luoxia's usual methods, he would not show any mercy to traitors. Ji Daozong's vision gradually blurred as he looked at Jiang Xiu walking over. It seemed that the three of them had already been executed. He couldn't help but think back to that time. He had always been unconvinced that Jiang Luoxia was stronger than him. He had been pursued by so many people, and had even become the sect master. He felt that he should be the strongest, but looking at Jiang Xiu now, he understood that he was too far behind. Not only was Jiang Xiu's current strength terrifying, but he had also been thrown into a bottomless abyss and lost his cultivation. He had even changed from immortal cultivation to spiritual cultivation. Not only had he stood up again, but he had also become stronger and more terrifying than before. He knew that he couldn't do it. There was a thump. Finally, Ji Daozong knelt down and said, "Sect Master, I was momentarily blinded by greed." "Traitor!" "Bah!" The elders and disciples all sneered at Ji Daozong. If Jiang Luoxia's strength hadn't been heaven-defying enough, the Tianqing school, which had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, would have been destroyed overnight. "Ji Daozong, you still have the face to say such things." The law enforcement elder was so angry that his whole body trembled. "You should be hacked into pieces." The other elders also gritted their teeth. Right now, the Celestial Motion sect was in shambles because of him. This time, most of the sect's resources had been used up. The sect's original power seemed to have been extinguished by him. Those who knew were the atrocities of the Ji Dao sect, but those who didn't know put the blame on the Celestial Motion sect, and so many people had died. "Ji Daozong, do you think you're worthy of being the Tianqing school's sect master? You're not even worthy of carrying the sect master's shoes." As for Ji Daozong, they wished they could eat him alive. It was as if Ji Daozong's parents had died. His face drooped, and his eyes were lifeless as he said, "Sect master, I didn't do it on purpose. Someone told me that they could help me become the sect master. So he wanted to explain, he wanted to tell others that he was instigated by others, but when the words came to his mouth, he realized that it was so weak. If he didn't have such ambition, how could he be persuaded by others, and be persuaded so easily? In fact, he had been waiting for such an opportunity. Now that the opportunity had come, he naturally had to seize it. Jiang Xiu asked, "Is it a woman?" Ji Daozong hurriedly nodded and said, "Yes, it's that woman called Su Shaowan. One day, she appeared in front of me and told me that I could ascend to the position of sect master." Jiang Xiu asked, "Was that before this venerable one became courtesan belle?" Ji Daozong nodded. It seems that before he had met her, she had already done many things. Jiang Xiu's eyes were somewhat dim. "This way, you should have deliberately revealed the information about the Heavenly Emperor Mountain and the Heavenly Emperor Tomb to me?" Ji Daozong was stunned for a moment, then he nodded. He was stunned because Jiang Xiu had used a questioning tone to talk about this matter. This had indeed happened to Jiang Xiu. Could it be that he didn't remember? So it's like this. Then the mystery was solved. It was the goddess who set up this trap and found the Ji Daoist sect. She provoked the ambition in his heart and started to lure him into the trap. Jiang Xiu unexpectedly invited a few friends or met a few friends, and then went together. In the past, when there was such an opportunity, Jiang Xiu would also invite a few friends. The goddess was afraid that the Ji Daoist sect wouldn't be able to control the situation, and was also worried that her friends wouldn't be controlled, so she used the Tai Hua sect. What happened next was already very obvious. What Jiang Xiu couldn't figure out was why the goddess wanted him dead. He didn't seem to have offended her, so why? Moreover, she knew that at that time, the one he couldn't let go of the most in his heart was Cheng Lingran. He even threw himself into a courtesan belle who looked exactly like Cheng Lingran. If it weren't for all these things that caused his mood to fluctuate, perhaps he wouldn't have fallen into her trap so easily. Why is the goddess scheming to harm me like this? Then the goddess appeared on Earth and interacted with him again. Did she find out that he wasn't dead and chased him to Earth? Jiang Xiu said. At that time, you stopped Shui Wuyao and didn't allow him to save me. As a result, Shui Wuyao could only helplessly watch me die. After his heart collapsed, what happened? Other than the goddess wanting to harm him, how did he suddenly go to Earth? What was the matter with Cheng Lingsu, the Divine Emperor's great destiny technique? Things didn't become clear. Instead, they became even more confused. Ji Daozong said, "Sovereign doesn't know?" "Oh, I don't know. Only then did he remember that Jiang Xiu was already dead at that time. Ji Daozong's thoughts sank into his memories. It was as if he had returned to the time when the wind was blowing. On top of the cliff, the tomb of the celestial emperor outside the cliff was turbulent and unpredictable. At that time, Shui Wuyao attacked like a madman. Everyone was a little frightened by him, but in fact, we also admired him in our hearts. A person who would risk his life for a friend is certainly worthy of admiration. Therefore, our attention was on him at that time, but we didn't expect that courtesan named Su Shaoan would actually pick up your corpse and throw you into the tomb of the celestial emperor. Jiang Xiu's expression changed slightly. Suddenly, a scene appeared in his mind. It was that courtesan named Su Shaoan. She looked exactly like Cheng Lingran, but she was dressed in ancient clothing. Her sad and beautiful eyes looked at Jiang Xiu's back with hidden bitterness. 2 lines of clear tears secretly slid down her face. Big brother Jiang, I'm not Ran. I'm Shaoan, your Su Shaoan. Big brother Jiang. Jiang Xiu felt a faint pain in his heart. And then, Ji Daozong said, it's just that I was really curious at that time. She clearly wanted you to die, but why did she suddenly? He was very puzzled. Hua Luiying, who had not spoken for a long time, laughed out loud again. It's him, he's the one who stopped her. Ji Daozong's face was full of bitterness. When everyone was attracted by the mist, he was not. Jiang Luoxia's so-called friendship was stupid in his eyes. It was idiotic, and it was not dog **T. Of course, he had to guard against it, just in case. However, how could he dare to say such words now? Was he afraid that the hatred on him was not deep enough? Of course, I wouldn't let her have her way at that time. Hua Luiying said. You even forced her. You forced her step by step to the other side of the cliff, and you didn't let her near the tomb of the celestial emperor. You threatened such a weak girl. Her little face was scared white by you, and her body was trembling. Ji Daozong couldn't bear it anymore and roared angrily. Stupid **T. Don't you have a share? In the end, Su Shaoan jumped off the cliff because of you. Hua Luiying said. It's you. It's you. The 2 of them actually started to quarrel. Jiang Xiu frowned and scolded coldly. Shut up. The 2 of them immediately stopped quarreling. Ji Daozong said. I didn't expect her to jump off the cliff. After all of this started because of her. I really didn't expect her to jump. When she jumped, I wanted to save her. Hua Luiying said darkly. You wanted to add a stab, right? Whether it was Ji Daozong or Su Shaoan, the fewer people who knew about this, the better. Ji Daozong said that he wanted to save someone. This was simply a joke. Of course, he wanted to add a stab, especially to kill Jiang Xiu completely. Jiang Xiu personally went to the tomb of the Celestial Emperor at the Celestial Emperor Mountain to check it out. The altitude was very high, and the wind was very strong. If the 2 of them jumped down with their weight, who knew where they would be blown to? Because Su Shaoan jumped down, you can't find my body? Ji Daozong nodded. They were all ambitious and ruthless people. To be able to get to where they were today, caution was the most important thing. Of course, they had to come down to find Jiang Xiu's body. Ji Daozong said. Yes, we looked, but we couldn't find it. We couldn't find it. When Jiang Xiu heard this, he was slightly disappointed. If that was the case, Ji Daozong and Hua Luiying didn't know the answer he wanted. After Jiang Xiu returned to Earth, and the things that happened should have happened after they fell off the cliff. However, these 2 people couldn't find them, so how could they know? He felt a wave of disappointment. Where should he go to find this answer? Suddenly, he thought of something and asked, Then how did you find the body? Ji Daozong said. I never gave up looking for the sovereign's body. Hua Luiying, Jiang Shitua, and the others also sent some disciples to search in the Celestial Emperor Mountain. About 33 years ago, we finally found your body. Also, your body is still intact. As for Su Shaoan. Chapter 694. Su Shaoan's name was unfamiliar to Jiang Xiu. His impression of her was that of Cheng Lingran. However, when Jiang Xiu heard that she had carried him off the cliff, his heart ached. Only then did he understand why she had silently shed tears behind his back. Jiang Xiu could feel her pain and sadness. No one wanted to be someone else's replacement. Just like Zhao Rong, who had said to Jiang Xiu in the palace on Mount Buzhou, "I don't want anything but to spend a night with you." Su Shaowan might be even more cheap and simple. She only wanted her big brother Jiang to recognize her and not treat her as someone else. Jiang Xiu's voice softened. What happened to Su Shaowan in the end? Ji Daozong said, "A pile of corpses." Even though Jiang Xiu was prepared, his heart still clenched when he heard it. Whether or not Su Shaowan fell to her death, she was definitely going to die. She was just a tool, a vessel for the goddess to descend. Once it was used up, the goddess would definitely be lost. The goddess's descent would not simply take over her body. It would also merge with her soul and influence each other. However, the goddess's consciousness would definitely have the upper hand. Under such circumstances, the goddess would definitely die if she left the vessel. In addition, Su Xiaowan's body was just a mortal body. After 30 years it would definitely rot. However, Jiang Xiu's immortal king body would not rot. Jiang Xiu asked, "Have you checked how long the corpses have been dead?" Ji Daozong said, "I haven't, but they naturally rotted. It should have been a few years." "What did you do with the corpses?" Ji Daozong hesitated. "It's just a pile of corpses. I didn't do much with it. In fact, I've always been curious about Su Shaowan. Who exactly was she and where did she come from?" Su Shaowan had not only stirred up Ji Daozong's ambition, but she had also successively won over Jiang Luoxia's good friends, Hua Luiying, Yin Longyue, the corpse god Daoist, and Jiang Shitua. Such a capable, resourceful, mysterious, and powerful woman had been mysteriously torn apart. He found it inconceivable. "Sect Master, do you have a grudge against her?" Jiang Xiu also wanted to know the answer to this question. Why did the goddess want to kill him? Jiang Xiu really couldn't figure out how he had offended her that she would go to such great lengths to set up a trap for him. Jiang Xiu said, "Is this something you can ask?" Ji Daozong was so scared that his entire body trembled, and he hurriedly shut his mouth. He really couldn't restrain the curiosity in his heart, and he secretly regretted it. He shouldn't have provoked Jiang Xiu at this time. Disciplinary elder, the Ji Dao sect plotted to harm our sect. Their crimes are monstrous. How should we convict them? Xiaoxuan had been waiting for this sentence. Except for the disciples of the Ji Dao sect and the people who had united around him, everyone in the Tianqing school gnashed their teeth in hatred, especially those who had been persecuted and whose dynasties had been exterminated. They all wanted to pick up a knife and stab the Ji Dao sect 10,000 times. Xiaoxuan said, "They should be punished for betraying the sect." Ji Daozong shouted, "Sect Master, please let me go. I made an unintentional mistake. From now on, I won't dare to have the slightest bit of selfishness. I won't be an ox or a horse for Sect Master." Jiang Xiu said, "If I let you go, do you think that the disciples of the Tianqing school who were persecuted by you will let you go?" Looking at the hateful eyes around him that wanted to eat him alive, Ji Daozong was like a deflated balloon. His evil deeds would eventually be repaid. No, he shouted in his heart that the winner was king, and the loser was in the wrong. He felt that he was at least an ambitious and ruthless person, but he pitifully begged for mercy. He knew that Jiang Luoxia wouldn't let him go, but he still begged for mercy. He felt that he had lost everything, and even his last bit of dignity had been lost. Even he looked down on himself. The crime of betraying the sect, along with the 9 generations of the clan, shall be executed. Their corpses shall be eternally cast into the fire prison. Hua Luiying watched as the people who harmed Jiang Xiu all met with annihilation. Jiang Shitua's Taihua sect was destroyed, Yin Longyue was killed, and Ji Daozong was executed. She, Hua Luiying, had her cultivation crippled, and the corpse god Taoist was imprisoned forever. Not a single one of them had a good ending. Jiang Luoxia was a demon. Back then, they actually killed a demon for the sake of the demon in their hearts. It was extremely laughable. Jiang Xiu's eyes swept over and looked at Hua Luiying. A cold light flashed in his eyes. "What about you?" Liuli was shocked and rushed out from the crowd. She looked at Jiang Xiu in front of her, and was extremely shocked. She opened her mouth and said, "Jiang Gu no Sect Master Jiang, spare my Shizuan. My Shizuan is all ready." She originally wanted to say that she was crazy, but Hua Luiying didn't look crazy at all. She has already lost her position as sect master, and lost her cultivation. She is already very miserable. Spare her. Sometimes, death was also a form of relief. Living in this world and enduring this unbearable pain. But the funny thing was that she didn't have the courage to commit suicide. Just like Hua Luiying. Hua Luiying's gaze was still unfocused and dazed. Jiang Xiu said, "How did she convince you back then?" Hua Luiying laughed foolishly at Jiang Xiu. Liu Li said, "Shizuan, just say it. Sect Master Jiang will definitely spare you." She sneaked a glance at Jiang Xiu. The current him was so high and unreachable. Just looking at him made her heart hang in suspense. Hua Luiying said, "She said that she can make you my manservant." What? The muscles on Jiang Xiu's marble-like face couldn't help but twitch. He almost scolded her for being crazy. Liu Li also covered her mouth in astonishment. Her eyes flashed with disbelief. Hua Luiying actually wanted to conquer Jiang Luoxia. Of course, this wasn't love. When a woman loved a man, she would wish him well and regard his glory as her own. She would worship him and not destroy him and conquer him. Perhaps Hua Luiying also had a period of time where she worshipped Jiang Luoxia. Wasn't the most outstanding genius of the immortal martial continent in the past 3,000 years a match made in heaven with a beauty like her, who was the most beautiful under the heavens? However, Jiang Xiu had never looked her in the eye. It was said that love and hate were separated by a fine line. When one couldn't worship someone, resentment would develop over time. When resentment filled up, it would become hatred. Hua Luiying said, "Actually, I was deceived. She wants your life. However, this isn't a bad thing. Seeing you die makes me quite happy." Shizuan. Liu Li was scared out of her wits. Now she actually said such things. If she angered Jiang Luoxia, she would really lose her life. However, how could Liu Li understand Hua Luiying's current feelings? If she didn't vent her resentment, how could she bear it? Otherwise, she wouldn't have appeared here. Seeing her companions from back then fall one by one, her heart would be at peace. Jiang Xiu said, "But since I died back then, why am I still alive?" This question hit the nail on the head. Many people were curious about what was going on, and were waiting for Jiang Xiu's answer. However, no one present would have thought that the person who asked this question was actually Jiang Xiu himself. How could he not know? Hua Luiying said, You were sure that I was already dead back then? You were carried down the cliff. 30 years later, when your body was found, you were already dead." On the side, Xiaoye interrupted and said, "Indeed, that was the case. That year, when sect leader's body was brought back to the sect, it was Elder Wu Shangke who personally examined it." Wu Shangke said, "At that time, I examined it very clearly. Every scar on your body, every detail, I saw it clearly. Looking carefully, it was indeed you, sect leader." Jiang Xiu frowned and muttered to himself. Xiaoye said, "I once suspected that Elder Wu Shangke was in cahoots with the Ji Dao sect, and that I personally supervised the construction of the tomb. Other than me and the Ji Dao sect, no one else could enter the tomb without damaging it. However, when sect leader appeared as an ordinary disciple, I specially went to the tomb and found that the body inside was already gone. I didn't do it. The Ji Dao sect definitely wouldn't do such a thing." Hua Luiying said, "I always thought that you obtained the power of the tomb of the Celestial Emperor. After many years of silence, you cultivated and left the tomb by yourself." Jiang Xiu said, "The power of the tomb of the Celestial Emperor? Impossible. If he had obtained the power of the tomb of the Celestial Emperor, he definitely wouldn't have appeared on Earth 30 years later. Moreover, the so-called tomb of the Celestial Emperor was simply a trap set by the goddess. Being able to become an immortal emperor could also be a pie drawn out by her." The expression on his face gradually became strange. However, he really didn't want to think about this kind of situation, and was even more unwilling to believe it. Chapter 695. Before thinking about this, Jiang Xiu wanted to know one thing. Did he really die back then? Or did he come back from the dead? And did God Emperor Cheng Lingsu's great fate technique target Jiang Xiu? Or was Jiang Xiu just someone who was implicated? Once the Great Fate technique was used, it would cause the entire wheel of fate to change. He originally thought that once he returned to the immortal martial continent, he would be able to draw a clear line with his past. But now, it seemed like things wouldn't be so simple. Since the goddess wanted to kill him, and he didn't die, it meant that she still had other tricks up her sleeve. However, he already had a rough idea of the goddess's methods. She was simply using another person's body to descend. His heart's devil towards Cheng Lingran had already been resolved. He wouldn't fall for her tricks so easily. If she wanted to deal with him, it wouldn't be so easy. Besides, Jiang Xiu wasn't someone who would remain silent after being harmed to this extent. He also wouldn't sit and wait for death. He didn't know how strong the goddess was exactly, but he was extremely confident in his Protoss bloodline. A few days ago, after he absorbed all the essence blood given to him by Zhao Rong, he smoothly entered the second form and entered the growth stage, becoming a god king. However, the growth stage also meant that he hadn't reached the mature stage yet. This also meant that Jiang Xiu still had room for improvement. Above the god king level was the god emperor level. According to the ancient records of the immortal martial continent, above the god emperors were the ancient gods. There were also some who referred to them as ancient gods. Jiang Xiu guessed that the goddess was one of those ancient gods. However, Jiang Xiu felt that the goddess was incomplete. If not, she wouldn't have borrowed the body of another to descend here. If she wanted to kill him, she could directly kill him. Therefore, an incomplete ancient god should be equivalent to a god emperor. For the time being, he assumed that the goddess's cultivation was at the god emperor level, and she was also bound by some kind of restriction. Jiang Xiu felt that as long as he became a god emperor, he would be able to deal with the goddess. Azurite said, "Sect leader Jiang, my master has already told you everything she knows. Please spare her life." Her voice was soft, but very sincere. She lowered her head, not daring to look at Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu said, "Don't forget how she killed your senior martial sisters. If it weren't for me, you would have definitely died in her hands." Lu Li said, "She is my master. I can't watch her die. She has already received the punishment she deserves." She slowly raised her head. The appearance of the Jiang Xiu in front of her was still the same as when he was at Green Spirit Mountain, but the aura and identity on his body were completely different. "Sect Master Jiang, do you still remember?" She said that if Liuli needs anything in the future, she can go to Tianxing School to look for you. Liuli wants to use this opportunity now. I beg you, please spare my master. Jiang Xiu had indeed made such a promise. He frowned slightly. He was never merciful to those who harmed her. Not everyone can get the chance to get my sect's help. Hua Luiying glanced at Lu Li from the corner of her eyes. She didn't believe that Lu Li would be so kind. Someone who colluded with outsiders to harm her would be so merciful as to use up Jiang Luoxia's favor? Many people compared Jiang Luoxia's favor to the Lingxi Pavilion's problem. It was even more precious than the Lingxi Pavilion's problem. Sometimes it could save one's life. It was indescribably precious. Lu Li's expression didn't change. Everyone wants sect leader Zhang's favor. Lu Li also knows how precious it is, but Lu Li still hopes that sect leader Jiang can spare my master's life. Lu Li can't thank you enough. Jiang Xiu's expression didn't change. He looked at Hua Luiying and only felt that she was incomparably pitiful. Her disciple had no intention of competing with her for fame. He had seen Yi Tongxi before. She was a gentle and graceful woman. He could tell that she was a very kind girl. And this Lu Li in front of him. It was a pity that these good girls with exceptional talents had a master who was so good at jealousy. They were killed for no reason. Alright, I promise you. Jiang Xiu's gaze fell on Hua Luiying. You can leave. Don't appear in front of this sect leader in the future. Many thanks, sect leader Jiang. Lu Li was overjoyed. Hua Luiying's face was pale. Her shocked gaze gradually blurred. In the end, she smiled foolishly and walked away without saying anything. After dusk, the sky had an additional sense of desolation. The last rays of light shone on her body. It was like her life. No matter how long she could live, everything that belonged to her, Hua Luiying, had already ended. Her departing figure dragged along the corridor of the newly built Heaven Motion Sect's palace, that had already been destroyed beyond recognition. It was yellowed and filled with desolation. A hero could be past his prime, but she had become filthy. It made people sigh. The enforcement elder came over and said, "Sect leader Jiang, what do you think we should do next?" Jiang Xiu said, "The Tianqing School's foundation is in the Tianqing Mountains. That's our homeland. This place doesn't belong to our Tianqing School." His gaze looked towards the mountain in the distance. It was where the elder of the sect was standing. "The people here don't welcome us either. Let's go back to where we came from." Hearing Jiang Xiu's words, the enforcement elder was overjoyed. The elders on the side also breathed a sigh of relief. Jiang Xiu wouldn't leave the Tianqing Mountains. His memories of the past 3,000 years were all there. His martial brothers and master were also buried there. Only by staying there did Jiang Xiu feel that it was home and homeland. Pass down the sect's decree. Move back to the mountain. The voice traveled far. The sect's disciples set off on their return journey. It was the complete opposite of when they came. When they returned, they were in high spirits. Thousands of flying boats turned back to Qingzhou. A month later, Jiang Xiu returned to Tianqing School. The sect was jubilant. It was like a festival. They were back, and everything was back on track. Under the gaze of countless people, Jiang Luoxia set foot on the main peak again. He set foot on the place he was incomparably familiar with, and ascended to the sect master's throne step by step. He was back. The elders, peak masters, and the affiliated dynasties all saluted and congratulated him. Pass down the sect's decree. Jian Yi will take the position of elder Wenjian of Wenjian Feng. Sheng Qing Tian, Qiliandian. Follow Jian Yi to take over Taihua sect, and gather the subordinate forces. The three of them stood out and answered, "Yes, sect leader." Although Tianqing School suffered heavy losses because of this turmoil, making up for the resources of the entire Taihua sect, not only would there not be a loss, but there would also be a surplus. The territory would also double. As long as they recuperated, Tianqing School would soon return to its peak, and even be stronger than before. Li Chang and the two maids were already dumbfounded. "I'm not dreaming, am I?" Xiaoya had a lively and exaggerated personality. She patted her cheek in disbelief. Her master was Jiang Luoxia. It was rumored once, but it was just a rumor, and there was nothing substantial. Later, it was proven to be groundless. But now the young master was really sitting on the throne of the sect master, ruling the world. And she had become the sect master's maid. And her value was 100 times higher. Oh my God! The maid of the sect master of Tianqing School was more prominent than the princess of the dynasty. She was just a small palace maid, but now she was more precious than the princess. That was definitely something that only existed in dreams. She felt like she had been hit on the head by a pie. I really didn't expect that the young master was the missing sect leader Jiang. Li Chang also sighed. He really didn't expect that he had once wanted to leave Jiang Xiu. Fortunately, he didn't do such a stupid thing. Although a guard was different from a maid, and he was no longer qualified to be Jiang Xiu's guard, he was still someone who had served the sect master. The sect should arrange for him to be a disciple or a deacon. Compared with his current cultivation resources, it was simply flying. In the blink of an eye, several months had passed. Tianqing School had taken over all the forces of the Taihua sect. The two sects were originally adjacent to Tianqing School. After taking over all the forces of the Taihua sect, the territory was connected, and 1/3 of the entire Qingzhou was occupied. Except for the Sacred Hall, which was a major sect, the rest were scattered small and medium-sized sects, and more of them were independent dynasties. This was the #1 major sect in Qingzhou, and its scale was comparable to the Tianqing School's Taihua sect. Because it was located far away from the Tianqing School's Taihua sect, it was peaceful. And at the border of Qingzhou, either the continuous mountains were too wide, and even if one flew over, it would be too time-consuming, or it was a vast and barren land. "Master, sect master." When Jiang Xiu saw Jian Yi and Xiaoya coming over, he said, "I need to make a trip to Qingzhou. I need to settle the score with Yan Longyue. Also, I need to go to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain again. The other elders have important matters to attend to, so you guys take care of the sect for the time being." Chapter 696. Jianyi proposed to accompany Jiang Xiu to Tsang Prefecture. Jiang Xiu knew that he was worried about him. Jianyi was there at the time and understood that the real mastermind behind Jiang Xiu's murder had not been caught yet. Jiang Xiu shook his head and said, "You were appointed as Elder Q Sword. Although you contributed to subduing the Taihua sect, your qualifications are shallow and your strength is weak. It's better for you to stay in the sect and learn more about the Immortal King level sword arts. Entering the Immortal King realm as soon as possible is the most important thing." Jianyi was Jiang Xiu's only disciple and had an extraordinary status. However, his cultivation was a realm lower than the other elders. Moreover, he held one of the two most important positions in the sect. Elder Q Sword was the sect's protector. Although Jiang Xiu was still around and no one dared to provoke the Tianqing school, Jiang Xiu did not want his disciple to be unable to hold his own forever. Jianyi was anxious. But, yes, in front of his master, he had to listen no matter how unwilling he was. Xiaoya's position did not change. He still held the same position as the Tianqing school's general manager. After this incident, Jiang Xiu's impression and trust of him were completely different. As the sect master's close subordinates, what they pursued was to gain the sect master's trust and favor. Keep an eye on the sect's affairs. After taking over the Taihua sect's territory, the Tianqing school's secular affairs doubled. The other elders were still running around outside and needed Xiaoya, the Immortal King, to take care of the situation at home. Yes, Jiang Xiu did not make a big fuss this time. He did not even bring a servant girl and went alone. Tsang Prefecture was very far away. It would take him half a month to reach there by flying boat. He specially went to Zhao Rong's tomb. When he arrived, the tomb was full of beautiful flowers. The surrounding grass was also covered in fresh green grass. Lustrous petals floated in the air. Zhao Rong would like to be buried in such a place for a long time. "You said that you were grateful to me for saving your family before following me. Then I'll grant your family endless wealth." With a wave of his hand, a beautiful ray of light shone down, forming a layer of light around the tomb. "This place will forever belong to you. No demonic beasts will be allowed to enter." With that, Jiang Xiu turned around and left. "As for the goddess, I will definitely make her pay the price." A few days later, it began to rain. Amidst the misty rain, he saw the two rivers of the flower square. The rain fell on the roof tiles on both sides of the river, creating a beautiful scene that looked like a Jiangnan water village. He seemed to see the back of the courtesan named Su Xiaowan. She stood by the riverbank, holding up an oil paper umbrella. He did not know what she was looking at or waiting for, but she seemed to be lost in thought. The streets were bustling with people and cars. In broad daylight, although the brothel's door was still open, there were sparrows in front of the door. No one would visit at this time of the day. Those who went in and out were all busy working and moving goods. "Where's the brothel keeper?" The brothel keeper was in a dazzling attic. She pushed open a window and was slightly stunned when she saw Jiang Xiu. Her gaze changed slightly. "Why are you here again? Are you done yet?" Jiang Xiu said. "Are you chasing away customers?" The brothel keeper said. "I don't have anything to entertain. Come again at night." Qingzhou was very far from here. It was not like Earth, where there was an explosion of information. The news of Jiang Xiu conquering the Tianqing school had not yet spread. Jiang Xiu said, "The matter has been resolved. I've killed all those who should be killed." "Killed?" The brothel keeper was shocked. "Customer, this is a brothel. It's a place to have fun. Don't say such frightening things. Besides, looking at how polite you are, you don't look like someone who would kill." Jiang Xiu walked in and saw an empty round table. He sat down and said, "Yan Longyue, Jiang Shitua, and Ji Daozong were all killed. Hua Luiying was crippled. The corpse god Taoist will be imprisoned forever." With a clang, the brothel keeper's arm, which was resting on the attic railing, slipped and almost fell down the stairs. Her eyes widened as she said, "Really?" Jiang Xiu said, "When have you ever heard me lie?" Thud thud thud. The brothel keeper was no longer calm. She ran down the stairs from the attic. "How did you kill him? It takes 4 immortal kings to kill an immortal king. Can you do it alone?" Seeing the brothel keeper's confused expression, Jiang Xiu said, I've already killed him. We'll know in the future. I came to find you this time because of Shui Wuyao. The brothel keeper was still dreaming. You want to cure him? Jiang Xiu said, he shouldn't be crazy. The brothel keeper said, so you plan to take him away? I have this thought. Although the Supreme Sparrow's medical skills aren't bad, he's still lacking compared to the 3 great immortal doctors. However, I don't want to take him away. I want to bring the immortal doctor to him. The brothel keeper said, then go and bring the immortal doctor to Shui Wuyao. Jiang Xiu said, I don't know the whereabouts of the 3 great immortal doctors. The brothel keeper said, so you came to ask me? I'm just a brothel owner. How would I know where the immortal doctor is? Of course I'd ask the Consonance Pavilion. Don't tell me that the great Tianqing school doesn't even have the authority to ask such a question. Seeing that the brothel keeper knew the customer, a waiter brought over a pot of wine. Jiang Xiu poured himself a cup. After drinking, he sighed and said, the Consonance Pavilion has a grudge with me. Ha! The brothel keeper was speechless. Jiang Luoxia, you're really something. The Consonance Pavilion has never interfered in disputes. You actually offended them. Jiang Xiu had tricked the Consonance Pavilion in the matter of the Jinyang Shao. The Consonance Pavilion retaliated and almost exposed Jiang Xiu's identity. Fortunately, the Ji Daozong was careless. If Jiang Xiu's identity was exposed at that time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The grudge between the 2 parties was thus formed. Jiang Xiu said, Shui Wuyao is also your friend. You don't want him to be crazy forever, right? The brothel keeper looked at Jiang Xiu with her charming eyes and said with disdain, don't try to use morals on me. I'm just a brothel keeper. Where would my friends come from? They're all my customers. Jiang Xiu said, does Shui Wuyao also go to brothels? That person was an idiot. When he drank, he was an idiot. When he was painting, he was an idiot. When he was discussing the sword, he was an idiot. It was hard to imagine what he would be like when he went to a brothel. A brothel idiot? Lying in a pile of women, he wouldn't get up even if he was beaten to death. The brothel keeper said, do you remember that Shui Wuyao adopted an orphan baby? Jiang Xiu vaguely remembered something like this. She came to find me because she wanted to find those 3 immortal doctors. Later, she heard that one of the immortal doctors was trapped in the Nether Crossing cult. That little girl went there, and it's been 60 years since she came back. Jiang Xiu frowned. The Nether Crossing cult is an evil path. In the Tsang state, there were still people who were divided into good and evil. Perhaps it was because of culture. For example, in the Qing state, there was no such thing. What was good or evil? There was no accurate definition. In fact, in the Tsang state, this concept was slowly fading away. However, there were some old stubborn people who liked to use the so-called evil path to blame on others. However, this kind of so-called evil spirit was still a little scary. It was especially xenophobic. If a little girl went in and was found to be up to no good, she would most likely be in trouble. Is that orphan baby a boy or a girl? A girl. She has some qualifications. The brothel keeper sighed and said, I originally wanted to let her stay in the brothel, but she was filial and insisted on curing Shui Wuyao. Jiang Xiu despised her in his heart. What kind of place did you think a brothel was? Everyone was like you. Being a brothel keeper, you thought you were awesome. The innocent girl would be stupid to stay in your brothel. However, he didn't dare to say this. If he did, the brothel keeper would definitely explode. Did that girl send back any news? The brothel keeper said, she did. There was definitely an immortal doctor in the Nether Crossing cult who was detained by the Nether Crossing cult for an important mission. After that, there was no more news. Jiang Xiu said, then I'll make a trip to the Nether Crossing cult. The brothel keeper said, you're leaving already? Aren't you going to spend the night here? There's a courtesan award today. The first time was still fresh, but after playing too much, it became reverse. The whole time it was just a scam. Jiang Xiu walked halfway and said, that's right, what's the name of the girl that Shui Wuyao adopted? What are her characteristics? The brothel keeper said, she's called Susu. Suing. She's very charming. She's quite attractive to men. Jiang Xiu said. Suing, what a coincidence. He was originally worried that if he met someone he didn't know, there would be some misunderstanding. He didn't expect that it would be the descendant of an old friend. It turned out that she entered the Nether Crossing cult with ulterior motives. Chapter 697. Speaking of Shui Wuyao, Jiang Xiu knew about the matter of Shui Wuyao taking in the orphan child. At that time, there were a few people present who were conceited. After all, they were all immortal kings. As for Jiang Xiu, it was not because of his status, but because he was afraid of trouble. Only Shui Wuyao was an exception. In the end, he took in the orphan child. Good karma, good karma. Although Suing had not been able to find one of the 3 great immortal doctors for her, in order to cure her master, she was willing to lower herself for 60 years. This filial piety was not in vain. Jiang Xiu immediately stood up, and was about to leave when the brothel keeper said, What, you're not going to stay the night again? There's no reason to stay. At this point, Jiang Xiu's footsteps suddenly stopped. He said, Is there anyone else in Su Xiaoan's family? The brothel keeper said, 60 years have passed. Even if there is, they are no longer here. Jiang Xiu nodded and walked out of the brothel. You're leaving just like that? You haven't paid yet. Jiang Xiu's footsteps did not stop. The brothel keeper angrily scolded. Hey, you want to go to a brothel and not pay? Stop right there. However, Jiang Xiu did not pay her any attention. Seeing his figure disappear into the drizzle, the brothel keeper's face revealed a trace of a smile. Jiang Luoxia is really back. The immortal martial continent really can't do without you. Suing had stayed in the Nether Crossing sect for 60 years, and still had not succeeded. It should be that a very important person in the sect had fallen ill. Jiang Xiu had openly come to the sect. The Nether Ocean sect would definitely not admit that the immortal doctor was imprisoned by them. However, finding Suing first was not a bad idea. As long as she knew where the immortal doctor was, she could directly save him. However, finding her seemed to be a bit troublesome. Because the Nether Crossing Church was labeled as an evil spirit, the place where it was located was also considered a gathering place of evil spirits. Most people were unwilling to go there. Only some of the natives were very xenophobic to a certain extent. It was a bit like North Korea on Earth. They were relatively closed off, but not completely closed off. For example, Suing had gone to the Green Spirit Mountain last time, but she hadn't stayed there for long. She had won the title of one of the top 10 beauties of the new generation, and seemed to be ranked 6th. It could be said that she had brought some glory to the Nether Crossing Church. The Nether Crossing cult was located under the sea and sky. There was a strange sea in the wind region, that people called the Nether Sea. Of course, mortals did not dare to go there. Only immortal cultivators could go there. However, it was not easy to enter. One had to open the gate of heaven awakening to enter. The Nether Crossing Church was located in the world below the Nether Sea. Because of this layer of isolation, it was one of the main reasons why it was sealed off and labeled as evil. When Jiang Xiu's flying boat arrived, all he could see was a dark sea that stretched as far as the eye could see. The Netherworld Sea was not like a real sea that was filled with dark waves. Instead, it was quiet and still. Black smoke rose from the surface of the dark sea, and there were even skeletons that seemed to be condensed from spells. It was because of this scene that it was called the Netherworld Sea. Open! Jiang Xiu pointed his finger forward, and a whirlpool appeared in the sea in front of him. The whirlpool opened, and a faint light shone from below. There was a world below the Netherworld Sea. To open the Netherworld Sea, one had to be at least of the Heaven Immortal realm. Ordinary Heaven Immortals would have a hard time, but for a divine king like Jiang Xiu, it was a piece of cake. He steered the flying boat into the whirlpool that opened up. It felt like he was passing through the great void. In just a short while, the world in front of him brightened up. He was in the sky, and the sky was clear. White clouds floated. The world below Jiang Xiu saw was completely different from the rumors outside. Not only was it not a place where evil spirits ran rampant, but it was peaceful. He landed on a mountaintop. As far as the eye could see, buildings were scattered all over the city, and the scenery was still the same. In a flash, he appeared in the city. The people here lived and worked in peace. It was no different from the outside world. As expected, rumors could not be trusted. The people walking around him were all ordinary people. There were only a few immortal cultivators. The structure of the houses, the streets, and the stalls beside the streets were the same as the outside world. Of course, this did not lose its uniqueness. It seemed that there were more interactions between this place and the outside world than expected. Although the spiritual chi was not as dense as the outside world, it was still a peaceful place for the immortal martial arts. It was a wise choice. Jiang Xiu noticed that cultivators in white robes, and with the mark of death on their foreheads, came and went from time to time. The passers-by would respectfully give way to them. They were the disciples of the Nether Crossing sect. There was a tavern in front of him. After Jiang Xiu entered, a waiter came to serve him. There were many people inside, and they were all tourists. Jiang Xiu stopped the waiter and asked, "I heard that there is a top 10 beauty here." When they talked about girls, the waiter's face showed an expression that all men understood. "Of course, but you are not from our immortal martial arts. But it is not as strict as it was a few hundred years ago. They are much more lenient to outsiders. Why are you also here to see Miss Su's beautiful face?" Jiang Xiu took out a golden pearl. "If you tell me where I can see Miss Su, this golden pearl is yours." The waiter's eyes lit up. "In the Su residence. Miss Su is Lord Su's daughter. If you want to see her, you can go to the Su residence. However, there are too many people waiting for Miss Su in front of Su Fu. You have to be patient." Jiang Xiu frowned. "Are you sure? I am talking about suing." The waiter's eyes were fixed on the golden pearl in Jiang Xiu's hand. He smiled and said, "It is Miss Suing, one of the top 10 beauties in the new list. How can I be wrong?" Jiang Xiu said, "But as far as I know, Suing is." At this point, his words came to an abrupt end. He didn't understand the situation. If by any chance he exposed Su Ying's past and harmed her, it wouldn't be good. "Orphan daughter?" The waiter laughed and said, "Don't you think it is a coincidence? Lord Su undoubtedly found the birthmark on Miss Su's body during a gathering. He was sure that she was his daughter that he abandoned when she was young. At that time, Lord Su was being hunted down. He had no choice but to abandon her in Bianyan Ridge in Song Province. Now, she has returned to her family. Miss Su is indeed Lord Su's daughter. If you want to see her, go to the Su residence. However, no one can see her." Jiang Xiu was stunned. He vaguely remembered that he met the orphan in Song Province's Bianyan Ridge. There was such a coincidence in the world. Suing had actually found her family. Following which, Jiang Xiu frowned. If Su Ying's family was in the underworld crossing, then she might not have stayed here to look for the immortal doctor for Shui Wuyao. If that was the case, then Jiang Xiu's reason for looking for her might have changed. Jiang Xiu asked, "How long ago was this?" The waiter said, "About 60 years ago." 60 years ago. The corner of Jiang Xiu's mouth raised into a smile. Shui Wuyao had just gone crazy and she wanted to go to Mingdu to find an immortal doctor. In the end, she met her family. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? One thing could be a coincidence, but two things could not be a coincidence. If Suing wanted to do things in Mingdu, she indeed needed an identity. "Thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord." After receiving Jiang Xiu's golden pearl, the waiter was so happy that he could not close his mouth. This was a golden pearl. He could not earn one even if he worked for 10 years. "If there is anything else, just tell me." Jiang Xiu said, "If there is anything, I will call you." After hearing some of the tavern's gossip, he asked the waiter about the Su family's location, and left the tavern. The tavern owner said, "Who is this person?" The waiter's face was full of smiles. "A young master. He probably wants to pursue Miss Suing. He is really lucky. Please give me another dozen of such young masters." This Lord Su was said to be a first-rank high official of the Mingdu cult. He was also a disciple. Although he was not considered very important in the Mingdu cult, he was still a powerful minister. With such a person as her backing, Su Ying's days in the Mingdu cult would be much better. Entering the Mingdu cult as a disciple would also allow her to grow smoothly. However, Suing was really patient. She actually went into seclusion for 60 years. After arriving at the Su family's residence, Jiang Xiu's horizons were broadened. In the past, he thought that a certain person's suitors lining up from one street to another was a metaphor. However, what he saw in front of him was real. The suitors actually stretched across 2 streets. Even the traffic on this street was directly paralyzed. The influence of the new top 10 beauties was so strong. Among them, there were quite a few young talents, and there were also some servants and servants. They all held gifts in their hands, and it looked like they were going to give Suing a gift. However, the Su residence's name was tightly sealed, and the people outside did not rush them either. Could it be that the Su family will open their doors regularly to receive gifts? A servant finally opened the door and said, "Everyone, please go back. Miss Su is preparing to go to the Sparrow Tower." Hua. The crowd was in an uproar. Sparrow Tower? Why? Why does Miss Su want to go to the Sparrow Tower? How can she go to the Sparrow Tower? Chapter 698. Jiang Xiu was confused. Why did these people's expressions change when they heard that Suing wanted to go to the Vermilion Bird Tower? Their faces were filled with unwillingness and regret. He asked a servant beside him, "What kind of place is the Vermilion Bird Tower?" The servant sized him up and said, "You must be a foreigner." Seeing Jiang Xiu nod, the servant explained, "The Vermilion Bird Tower is the place where the sect master collects beauties." Jiang Xiu suddenly understood. Suing decided to go there because she couldn't get close to her target. After waiting for a long time, she decided to give herself to the sect master. She's sacrificing a lot for Shui Wuyao. The Su residence's entrance was in an uproar. Inside the Su residence, it wasn't peaceful either. It was like a minister's daughter marrying a licentious monarch. No parents would be willing. However, Suing definitely had a way to make them helpless. She might be one of the top 10 beauties on the ranking list. If the sect master was a lecherous person, he definitely wouldn't let her go. This move was indeed quite ingenious. It could be said that there were no flaws. Jiang Xiu was a little impressed by this little girl's intelligence. "Young Miss Su, you can't go to the Vermilion Bird Tower. I'm willing to go bankrupt for you. I only beg you not to go." Many youths were shouting outside. Some of them were crying bitterly. Jiang Xiu thought that this wasn't just pure love. It was a bit like a fan towards an idol. This kind of indescribable worship was very scary. They were willing to give without asking for anything in return. They were even willing to give up their lives. It seemed that Suing was indeed a very charming girl, at least to these people. Jiang Xiu left the Su residence's area without leaving a trace. After a few days, Jiang Xiu didn't see Suing come out of the Su residence. She seemed to be waiting for the day. According to Jiang Xiu's information, it was going to be a very important festival for the people of Underworld Crossing. It was called the Ghost Orchid Festival. It was likely that Suing would go to the Vermilion Bird Tower on that day. And he didn't know where Suing was. If she was really defiled by the so-called sect master, the price would be too great. Not to mention that she was Shui Wuyao's adopted daughter, she was also his servant. He planned to make a trip to the Su residence. Jiang Xiu did not bribe the gatekeeper. Instead, he directly passed through the wall and entered the Su residence. Inside, the residence seemed to be hosting a banquet. The servants were bustling about. As the dignified sovereign of Tianqing School, if it weren't for the fact that you were Shui Wuyao's adopted daughter and were so filial, this sovereign would never condescend to do such a thing. But what a coincidence, he couldn't find Su Ying's boudoir even after looking around. Logically speaking, it should be in the West Wing, but he didn't see it. Passing through the West Wing, she saw a small independent building. Inside, there was a faint yellow light. It was very quiet and elegant. There were no maids or servants walking around inside. Judging from the silhouette of the shadow on the window, it should be a woman. It was very likely to be Su Ying's house. Lord Su's position was high and powerful, so he must have many wives, children, and maids at home. There should also be many children. Su Ying had returned 60 years ago, so she must have been ostracized and lived alone in this remote building. Of course, it could also be her own choice. Who is it? Jiang Xiu stepped into the small building. A maid looked at him, her eyebrows furrowed. Tell your family's young miss that her master has come. The maid was stunned for a moment. She then realized that she had been taken advantage of and angrily said, Pay! Nonsense! Which lecherous wastrel are you? You dare to behave atrociously in my family's young miss courtyard. Jiang Xiu said, Go ahead and tell her. He thought to himself that since Su Ying was such a person who remembered kindness, and was willing to stay in seclusion for 60 years for the sake of her adoptive father, and was willing to give herself to the cult leader, she shouldn't have forgotten him, her savior, and even agreed to be his maid. Don't pester me endlessly. Hurry up and leave. If you don't leave, I'm going to call for help. Jiang Xiu said dumbfoundedly. You little girl really don't know what's good for you. How do you know that I'm a bad person? You didn't even tell your family's young miss. What if you really did drive away your family's young miss master? He also had rare patience. It wasn't worthwhile to bicker with a maid. He was serious and hoped that she could understand. But if a maid was so sensible, then she wouldn't be a maid. She angrily said, If you don't leave, I'm going to shout. 1, 2. All right, she even threatened him. Jiang Xiu came. He really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he really didn't want too many people to know that he was here. If it was exposed, then it would be troublesome. But this maid didn't act according to common sense. Before she could count to 3, she shouted, Someone come, a thief has entered. With this shout, the nearby guards rushed over. All of them were wearing armor. Who are you? Jiang Xiu frowned. He was really screwed up by this maid. He opened his mouth and said, I'm your young miss friend specially. Liar, the maid said. Didn't you just say that you're the young miss master? Master? What master? An extremely pleasant voice came from inside the building. With this voice, the door was heard being pushed open. A beautiful figure walked out in the dim light. Su Ying. Jiang Xiu looked up. His face was still indifferent. He looked at her and said, Do you still recognize me? The moment Su Ying saw Jiang Xiu, she froze for a moment, blinking her bright eyes. A trace of a smile flashed across the corner of her mouth. She opened her mouth and said, I don't know you. Where have we met before? The maid became excited. See, I said he was a liar. Guards, hurry up and kick him out. Ever since the young miss was called one of the top 10 beauties in the new edition, she didn't climb over their wall. Su Ying smiled and moved her eyebrows. She was about to turn around and go back. Jiang Xiu saw that this girl was really going to go back on her word. He said, If you don't admit it, then I'll go to Bai Qianqian and let her announce it to the world. Su Ying stopped in her tracks. Bai Qianqian was her Achilles heel, especially when she announced that she had promised to be a maid, and went back on her word. Su Ying said angrily, What did you just say? Jiang Xiu said, Nothing much. If you heard it, then you heard it. If you didn't, then you didn't hear anything. Just pretend that I didn't come. You can go where you should go. Su Ying frowned. Of course she heard it. Jiang Xiu said, What, you still don't recognize me? Now that you mention it, I remember. Jiang Xiu said, Is this how it should be? How can you not recognize your own master? Su Ying looked at the smug look on Jiang Xiu's face, and heaved a sigh of relief. However, since she was able to hide for 60 years for the sake of her adoptive father, she could tolerate the fact that Jiang Xiu, this bastard, had given her the status of a servant. After all, she was going to the Vermilion Bird Tower in a few days. The maid said in disbelief, Miss, who is he? Is he really your master? Master's master. Who is she to her? Su Ying couldn't be bothered with this slightly pale maid and said, Why are you here? Do you need something from me? Jiang Xiu said, Is this how you treat your master? Su Ying put on a dignified appearance and waved her hand at the maid and the guard, saying, You can leave first. After the servants left, she didn't look so reserved and said, What are you doing here? Jiang Xiu ignored her and directly barged into her room. Su Ying's expression changed. Hey, what are you doing? Who allowed you to come in? What do you want? Jiang Xiu had already entered the small building. The interior was elegantly decorated. He found a place to sit down. What am I doing here? Of course I'm here to find my maid. You can't have forgotten, right? Jiang Xiu had indeed saved her before. Su-ying couldn't deny this point. However, she didn't welcome this uninvited guest. Her matter had reached an important point. I'm very grateful for your help back then. However, I have an important matter to attend to in a few days. Once this matter is over, you can do whatever you want. However, please don't cause trouble now and don't use Bai Qianqian to threaten me. Su-ying said. Jiang Xiu said. Since you agreed to be my maid, then you are my maid. You have long lost your autonomy. What right do you have to say no? Su-ying frowned. Don't go too far. I already promised to give you an explanation later. Just as the two were conversing, a sound came from outside. It was the sound of dense footsteps. There seemed to be quite a number of people. Then a middle-aged man's voice sounded. Shouting, Su-ying's expression changed and said nervously, "Oh no, my father is here." Chapter 699. Seeing Su-ying's extremely nervous appearance, Jiang Xiu's face was calm and indifferent. He opened his mouth and said, "It's your father. I saved his daughter. He has no reason not to properly thank me." Su-ying said very nervously, "You should leave first. You're a man in my boudoir. If word gets out, it will damage my reputation." She really did need to be nervous. If word got out that she was impure or had a bad reputation, even if the Dark Crossing cult's leader was really lecherous, he would definitely not want her. How could a leader lack women? Even the Emperor's harem had 3,000 beauties, let alone him. The Dark Crossing cult's leader didn't care, but Su-ying did. This was her only chance to get close to the Dark Crossing cult. She definitely wouldn't give up. Jiang Xiu said, "You're already this young master's maidservant. Why should you care about this kind of gossip? Someone will know sooner or later." Su-ying was so angry that her chest violently heaved up and down. She didn't care about the difference between men and women and unceremoniously grabbed Jiang Xiu's arm. She pulled him up and pushed him inside. "Don't be a good-for-nothing. Hurry up and hide. Otherwise I'll teach you a lesson." Pushing him inside was the boudoir. It was completely exposed. Aside from the bottom of the bed and the wardrobe, there was no place to hide. Moreover, there was no way to hide in those two places. Su-ying's eyes widened when she saw the screen. "Hide in the bucket behind." Jiang Xiu's face was cold as he stared at her. He said unhappily, "What kind of joke is this? Do you think your father has the qualifications to make me hide in the bucket?" Shouting. The voice from outside came again. "I heard that a man broke into your courtyard." Su-ying was so anxious that sweat appeared on her forehead. She clasped her hands together and looked at Jiang Xiu pleadingly. "I beg you, hide first. If my father finds out, it will be very troublesome." Jiang Xiu was originally still indifferent, but when he saw the tears in Su-ying's anxious eyes, his heart couldn't help but soften. Thinking of her original intention for doing this, his heart still softened. He turned around and went behind the screen. Su-ying let out a sigh of relief and turned to open the door. She said with a smile, "Father, why are you here?" Shouting, "Father heard from the servants that a man barged into your place." Su-ying said, "Oh, I've already sent him away. He's a lecher. Ever since your daughter entered the so-called top 10 beauties list, there have been many people like him." Lord Su strode into Su-ying's boudoir, as if he did not believe his daughter's words. Because the situation was inconsistent with the servant's report, he looked around the room. Su-ying did not dare to speak and quietly followed behind him, but her heart was extremely nervous. She hoped that this fake father would have some misgivings about her privacy and not ransack the cabinets. Shouting, "Regarding the matter of going to the Vermilion Bird Tower, I know that I have wronged you. However, as citizens, we do not have the right to refuse the orders of the sect leader. I hope you can understand." Lord Su's tone was heavy. "Also, I hope that you can consider this family. If not, you know with the sect leader's temper, our family will be destroyed." Su-ying nodded and said, "Your daughter understands." Lord Su was still unwilling to give up and looked around the room again. There was indeed no other aura. His cultivation was not low, so it was not worthwhile for him to catch someone. However, if he did not go over to take a look, How would he be able to sense the aura of a divine king that was deliberately concealing? He only gave up when he was sure that there was no one around. Rest well for the next 2 days, and adjust your complexion. Suing said, your daughter understands. In the end, Lord Su reluctantly left with his men. He even paused for a while after he left. So you want to go to the Vermilion Bird Tower to become the sect leader's woman? When Suing saw Jiang Xiu come out, her gaze was somewhat evasive. She had indeed lied to Jiang Xiu just now. She sighed and said, you heard it just now. You did save me, but I'm very sorry. I'm going to the Vermilion Bird Tower. I want to become the sect leader's woman. When I gain favor and power in the future, I will agree to any request you have. Jiang Xiu looked at the beautiful woman in front of him. From his impression, compared to Bai Qianqian's eagerness to get rid of him, and even disregard his kindness, Jiang Xiu admired Suing more. Although she was called a demoness by Bai Qianqian, in reality, she knew how to be grateful. You are my maid. How can you be someone else's woman? Suing said in astonishment. Didn't you hear me clearly? I want to go to the Vermilion Bird Tower. I want to be the sect leader's woman. Jiang Xiu said, listen carefully. You can refuse. Suing said, I can't refuse. Absolutely not. Don't tell me you don't want to live anymore? You want to fight over a woman with the sect leader? Jiang Xiu said, is he very powerful? Suing said, he is the most powerful man in the underworld. He is also an immortal king who is unimaginably powerful. You know about immortal kings, right? They are existences on another level. She vaguely remembered when her adoptive father used his sword. Sword Qi crisscrossed the valley, and the sound of the sword whistled for thousands of miles. It was as if heaven and earth had been destroyed. That power was still fresh in her memory. If you offend the sect leader, you will die. Don't do anything stupid. Jiang Xiu said. The immortal martial continent is so big. If we leave, even if he has divine powers, where can he find us? Moreover, it is very inconvenient for people in the underworld to go in and out. Suing said, but I still have to think about my family. If I leave, my family will definitely suffer. You right. What is your name? After all this time, she didn't even know Jiang Xiu's name. Jiang Xiu. Suing said, I will remember your name. I will definitely repay your kindness. After I go to the Vermilion Bird Tower, you can come find me if you need anything. I will definitely settle it for you. No matter what it is, if you want glory, splendor, wealth, and rank, I can give it to you. Jiang Xiu said, I don't need these things. I just want you to be my maid. Suing shook her head. That's impossible. You should leave. Jiang Xiu's eyes revealed a thoughtful expression. He had previously considered that even if he and Suing forced their way in, the sect leader of the underworld might not admit that he had captured the immortal doctor. At that time, all their efforts would have been in vain. However, seeing Su Ying's insistence, Jiang Xiu decided to wait and see what she had planned. He stood up and said, I won't give up. I will come again. I can see that you don't actually want to go to the Vermilion Bird Tower. There's no need to make yourself suffer. Some things can be resolved in other ways. There's no need to be so extreme. Seeing Jiang Xiu leave, Suing was in a daze. She looked at his back with a strange expression. The Ghost Orchid Festival passed in the blink of an eye. Suing thought that Jiang Xiu would still pester her. However, she didn't expect that Jiang Xiu would never appear again after that night. Her family had also prepared a grand dress for her. Today, she would go to the Vermilion Bird Tower. Today, she would not be the only girl going to the Vermilion Bird Tower. There would be many other girls. Although she was the most famous, there would still be other powerful opponents. Back then, when the emperor chose his concubine, the scene was magnificent. Usually, immortal cultivation sects did not like this. However, the Nether Crossing sect was seen as evil. Therefore, it was reasonable that this matter was somewhat absurd. Suing had a golden crown on her head. It was full of golden pendants. When she walked, she swayed. The makeup on her face was very thick. She looked indescribably gorgeous. However, her eyes were still clear. The red dress on her body floated on the ground, making her look even more luxurious. There were even children scattering flower petals on the side. Today, countless young talents around the Su residence came to witness everything. The goddess in their hearts was going to be sent to the Vermilion Bird Tower to become another man's plaything. In the face of power, they were sad, angry, helpless, and dejected. Su Ying's face was expressionless. However, her hands were clenched tightly. She should be nervous. She should be nervous. She heard that those who entered the Vermilion Bird Tower were fine if they were favored, but those who weren't would die inside without being able to see anyone outside. However, she was confident. She would definitely be favored. When she walked out of the Vermilion Bird Tower, two people in white came to receive her. They had a deathly aura around them. It was eerie and scary. There was a cinnabar dot between their eyebrows. Just as Su Ying was about to enter the Vermilion Bird Tower, she saw a man standing on a roof in the distance. Although she couldn't see his face from afar, she felt that it was Jiang Xiu. A strange feeling arose in her heart. She wanted Jiang Xiu to save her and leave immediately. However, all of this was her own choice. She had no choice. She had been dormant for 60 years because of this. She lowered her head and walked in. Chapter 700. The night was like water, and the dazzling Vermilion Bird Tower was lit up with bright lights. The vermilion bird at the top of the tower spread its wings and emitted a bright red light. The entire Vermilion Bird Tower gave people an unapproachable feeling. Many top-notch beauties from the netherworld and the outside world were gathered in this tower, adding a bit of extravagance to the dazzling Vermilion Bird Tower. A noble place like this gathering of extravagance made people yearn for it, but also made people shrink back. Many men looked up at this Vermilion Bird Tower late at night and had beautiful dreams. Su Ying had already been in there for a full day. The originally unwilling suitors were already in despair, thinking that Su Ying must have been ruined. What a pity! However, Jiang Xiu could see clearly from afar that after Su Ying entered, she was assigned to a floor, which was the highest floor. She must have been evaluated inside. With Su Ying's beauty and talent, she should be the best among this batch of people who entered. At this moment, she was leaning against the wall and looking at the dazzling lights of the netherworld city. Her charming face was a bit anxious, twitching a bit, and a bit sad. In the end, it turned into a long sigh. She had finally entered, but she didn't know how long she had to wait. Sigh. Suddenly, a sigh was heard. Su Ying was surprised. Where did that sound come from? Why was there a sound here? She looked over and saw a tall figure standing on the roof, close by. It's you. Why is it you? Su Ying looked around nervously. After confirming that there was no one around, she lowered her voice and said nervously, "Do you want to die? You actually dare to come to the Vermilion Bird Tower." Sigh. Jiang Xiu sighed again. Su Ying saw that he was putting on an act and didn't say anything. She couldn't help but frown. What are you doing? Do you know that you're in danger now? It'll be bad if someone sees you. Sigh. Su Ying was in a bad mood. What do you want? Jiang Xiu said. I'm sorry that a servant girl was snatched away by someone else. Tell me, should I settle the score with Sect Master Mingdu? Su Ying looked at his resolute face and his cold and serious expression. She could not help but roll her eyes. Please, who do you think you are? The sect master of the Nether Crossing sect is an immortal king. There are also protector immortal kings and the 12 earthly fiends. All of them are top-notch experts. Hurry up and leave before anyone discovers you. Not only did Jiang Xiu not leave, but he also sat down. Today, after you entered Sparrow Waiting Tower, I saw you secretly communicating with a man, as if you were planning something. Su Ying's charming face immediately changed, and a trace of panic flashed through her eyes as she said, I was only informing my servant. Jiang Xiu said. Is that so? But I don't think so. That person doesn't look like a servant. Su Ying's face was cold. Don't talk nonsense. If you keep talking nonsense, I'm going to call for help. Jiang Xiu said, go ahead. When the time comes, you'll be interrogated by the Nether Crossing sect. Coincidentally, I've seen that person before. I think he's from the Immortal Tribulation sect. When Su Ying heard the 3 words Immortal Tribulation sect, her face turned completely pale. She tried hard to calm herself down, but her heart was in turmoil. That person was indeed from the Immortal Tribulation sect, which was her real sect. That person was here to cooperate with Su-Ying. If he was exposed, Su-Ying reckoned that it would be difficult to hide her own identity. Then everything would be for naught. What do you want? Jiang Xiu said. As an evil sex demoness, you colluded with an outside sect. What do you want? Su-Ying avoided Jiang Xiu's gaze, but her hands touched her hair helplessly. She was clearly flustered, but she still had to pretend to be calm. It was quite interesting. Don't let your imagination run wild. I'm innocent. Jiang Xiu cursed in his heart. Little demon fox, she wanted to use this to change the topic. If it wasn't for Jiang Xiu knowing Su-Ying's intentions, if it was someone else, they might have been confused. It doesn't look like it. You're pulling and pulling. Your relationship isn't simple. Su-Ying blushed and said, No, don't talk nonsense. I entered the Vermilion Bird Tower with a clean record. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been assigned to the highest level. The inspection here is very strict. Jiang Xiu sighed. The inspection can only see the skin. Some people's hearts don't belong here. Their skin is just a walking corpse. Su-Ying looked at Jiang Xiu suspiciously. This guy's words seemed to reveal something. Actually, if there's any problem, I can help you solve it. You don't have to do this. Jiang Xiu looked up. Under the night sky, his eyes were incomparably firm and confident. There was actually a strong aura of a king. I don't understand what you're trying to say. Jiang Xiu said. Today I asked that person. He told me everything. Impossible. Su-Ying blurted out. However, as soon as the words left her mouth, her eyes froze. She knew that things weren't good. In the end, she was still tricked by Jiang Xiu. If she said that it was impossible, wouldn't she be admitting that she had other motives? She could only close her small mouth tightly and make up her mind to never speak another word to this person again. Jiang Xiu said. He said that he was here to find out the whereabouts of a person. Su-Ying was once again fooled. In front of Jiang Xiu, this old fox, she had been led by the nose the entire time. Impossible, it's impossible for him to say it. Jiang Xiu just looked at her indifferently. This reminded Jiang Xiu of when he was on Earth. He had a friend who was arrested because of a small matter. At first, when he was being interrogated, he would not open his mouth even if he was beaten to death. However, as soon as he sat down, he felt uneasy. The interrogator only looked at him and asked him if he was the one who stole the car in the east of the city. In the end, Jiang Xiu's friend exploded and defended himself on the spot. Then he said that he had done something like scratching the car, evading the fare, peeping at girls, and even breaking the window of a primary school football game. He even swore to the heavens that he was not the one who stole the car. Sometimes people were like this. Su-Ying said, He is my friend. His wife is seriously injured. He wants me to help him find out if the immortal doctor, Ji Wuhua, is in the underworld. It's that simple. Su-Ying's psychological quality was not bad. She hid most of it and revealed a small part of it. However, Jiang Xiu frowned slightly. So it's Ji Wuhua. Because the three great immortal doctors had supreme skills, countless people begged them. They used money, secret techniques, or magic treasures as the price. These were fine, just a little annoying. However, there were also some people who thought they were powerless and plotted to achieve their goals. Of course, they would try their best to hide. As for the three peak stage immortal doctors of the immortal martial continent, Ji Wuhua was an anomaly. Not only was her medical skills top-notch, her cultivation base was also top-notch. At the immortal king realm, Jiang Xiu had never seen her before, but his friends had seen her before. They had even fought against her before, and had evaluated her strength. If it wasn't for the fact that her medical skills were too top-notch, her strength alone would have already caused her name to resound throughout the immortal martial continent. Jiang Xiu asked, Is Ji Wuhua in the underworld crossing cult? Su-Ying said, It shouldn't be wrong. My friend just wants the immortal doctor to save someone. Jiang Xiu fell into silence. Since Su-Ying mentioned the immortal doctor, then there was no need to lie about who the immortal doctor was. If it was Ji Wuhua, then things might be different. It was very difficult to trap an immortal king. At least 4 immortal kings were needed. According to what Jiang Xiu knew, the underworld crossing cult was only a mid-level sect. There wouldn't be more than 4 immortal kings in the sect. Moreover, Ji Wuhua had heaven-defying talent and was good at transformation. It could be said that she was a disguise, but she was a real one. Even ghosts and gods couldn't see through her. Until now, no one in the immortal martial continent knew what Ji Wuhua looked like. How could a person who understood medicine and was good at transformation be caught by the underworld crossing cult's leader? If it was really not voluntary, then this underworld crossing cult's leader was not simple. However, on second thought, Jiang Xiu thought of another matter. Jiang Xiu said, "Even if your friend finds Ji Wuhua, what if she is unwilling to treat him? You should know that it is very difficult to ask the 3 great immortal doctors to help. It is not something that can be persuaded by ordinary conditions." Su Ying's clear eyes revealed a sad expression. This was the thing she was most worried about. Even if she found Ji Wuhua, how could she persuade her to save her foster father? Even if she had to give up all her family's property, even if she had to hand over everything she had learned. Suddenly, footsteps came from the Sparrow Tower. Su Ying said nervously, "Someone is coming." Was it the underworld crossing cult's leader? Chapter 701. Su Ying's heart became extremely nervous. She turned her head and looked over. A tall man wearing pitch-black armor walked in with steady steps. His face was shrouded by the shadows of the roof beams. He did not look light, which made him look exceptionally valiant and frightening. "Ji General." Su Ying tried her best to control her voice so that he wouldn't hear anything strange. "Young Lady Su." The lights in the Sparrow Tower were very dim. He walked over slowly. He was wearing official boots, and every step he took was very imposing. When he got closer, they could see that he was a middle-aged man wearing a helmet with a resolute face. He wasn't the sect master of Ming-Du, someone who wasn't the sect master of Ming-Du, but could enter the highest tower of the Sparrow Tower must be a guard of the Sparrow Tower. It was said that the guard general of the Sparrow Tower was one of the 12 Earth Fiends, General Ming Luo. "General, it's so late. Do you have something to do here?" Ming-Du's gaze was deep. A bronze accessory hung on his waist. The muscles on his face tightened. He looked at Su Ying's charming face and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, young lady Su." Su Ying said, "What do you mean?" Ming Luo said, "Some people don't like the fact that your Su family's power is too strong. Your father's authority is already extremely heavy. Miss Su is a beauty of the nation. In the future, she will definitely gain the cult leader's favor." Su Ying's face gradually turned pale. You want to kill me?" Ming Luo shook his head. "This is the Sparrow Tower. No one dares to kill here. Moreover, I'm killing you, young lady Su. As a guard of the Sparrow Tower, why would I find trouble for myself?" "Men." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 clouds of black smoke floated from behind him. They landed on the ground and turned into 2 black armored soldiers. "As long as you ruin young lady Su's chastity, the sect master will not accept you. Instead, he will blame the Su family's daughter for not knowing how to behave." Su Ying's face lost all color in an instant. "General Ming Luo, the Su family doesn't have any ambition. It was an accident that I was recruited into the Sparrow Tower. Please take pity on Su Ying and spare her. I will repay your kindness in the future." Ming Luo said, "People change. Ambition also grows slowly. I've seen too many examples like you." Ming Luo walked between life and death all day, and was known for his ruthlessness. "Miss Su, are you going to resist or surrender?" When Su Ying saw the 2 black smoke men approaching, she couldn't help but retreat backwards. Her cultivation wasn't weak, but compared to the 2 Ming Sha beside Ming Luo, she was still far behind. Her clear eyes were filled with fear and anger. "Ming Luo, aren't you afraid that the cult leader will punish you if something happens?" "Ha ha ha." He laughed heartily. "Young lady Su, I thought you were a smart person, but it turns out that you're just a mediocre person. Do you think that the cult master would punish me, one of the 12 earthly fiends, for a mere woman? Indeed, in this chaotic immortal martial continent, There wasn't a single person in power who would waste the strength of their sect for the sake of a beauty. This was especially so for the 12 earthly fiends that could support half the sky of the underworld continent. Take him down. Suing was anxious and angry. She had never thought that such an accident would happen. She groaned inwardly. If she lost her chastity, she wouldn't be able to see the cult leader. How could she inquire about the whereabouts of the immortal Dr. Ji Wuhua? Her 60 years of work would be in vain. Forget it. Her first thought was to escape. Not to mention her plan. Being defiled was not something that a woman could endure. Thus, she thought of Jiang Xiu, who was outside the window. It would be better if there was someone to provide support. However, when she turned around and was about to jump out of the window, she saw a scene that almost made her heart collapse. She saw Jiang Xiu desperately running for his life. Seeing how he was running away without any sense of loyalty, she felt very indignant. However, when she thought about it carefully, he had saved her once, but she didn't repay him. Now that she was in trouble, he didn't save her. It was normal for him not to save her. Moreover, the opponent was so strong. She felt an indescribable grievance in her heart. No matter what, she was also one of the top 10 beauties. There were so many people outside crying and shouting that they would die for her. The chance to be the hero saving the beauty was right in front of you, but you didn't cherish it. Who could you blame? You deserved to fall on all fours. Suing bit her red lips and transformed into a beam of light that shot out from the Vermilion Bird Tower that was thousands of meters high. Her speed was very fast, but Ming Sha, who was behind her, was even faster. He felt a piercing pain on his back, and his entire body was sent flying by the black smoke. She took out a talisman and pasted it on her body. The golden light of the talisman flashed, and her body suddenly traversed a few thousand meters in a flash. Her speed didn't decrease as she rushed forward. That was the sea, the vast and boundless archipelago sea region. Under the night sky, the sea region was pitch black. The waves kept crashing against the reefs. The sea region near the Vermilion Bird Tower was lit up by lights, and it was slightly brighter. With a splash, Suing fell into the water. There was a faint layer of smoke on the surface of the sea. Once night fell, the smoke would spread. It couldn't be seen clearly from afar, but when one got closer, one would realize that the smoke was actually very thick. Even the ships were covered. The moment Suing fell into the water, a ship swayed over. It was Jiang Xiu. Quickly come up. When Suing emerged from the water, she was very shocked. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Why would Jiang Xiu appear here? Since she didn't believe that Jiang Xiu would come to save her, it was even more difficult to imagine how he would appear here so precisely to save her. But at this moment, she couldn't care less. Reaching out, Jiang Xiu pulled her up onto the ship. The light at the bow of the ship was very dim, but it was enough to break through the smoke. Jiang Xiu moved the oars and disappeared into the smoke ahead. And when the two Ming Sha chased here, their gazes swept across the sea. The ship had already swayed into the reefs, and they couldn't see any trace of it. His reaction was very fast and accurate. Su Ying's entire body was drenched. Her clothes were tightly wrapped around her exquisite body. Her face was wet from the seawater, but her eyes shone brightly under the light. Didn't you escape? Her voice was a little soft. She was a little guilty, but also a little surprised. Escape? Jiang Xiu's fleeing figure was still in Su Ying's mind. It turned out that he wasn't trying to escape, but had prepared a ship to save her. But she didn't understand how Jiang Xiu could appear here so accurately. How did you appear here? Jiang Xiu said. It's very simple. In the situation at that time, of course you wouldn't give up without a fight. You couldn't beat them, so you could only escape. There was only one way to escape, which was to jump out of a nearby window. If you were on land, you wouldn't be able to escape the two Ming Sha's pursuit. Ming Sha is afraid of water, and now that it's night, the sea is very foggy. Escaping from the sea is your only chance. As for finding your position so accurately, that's even simpler. Who would run in a zigzag route? Of course it's a straight line. The shortest distance is to enter the sea. Suing looked at Jiang Xiu in front of her, and her gaze gradually changed. This person looked a little scoundrel, but he was actually so intelligent. What was even more rare was that he really was a hero saving a beauty. According to the script, the beauty had to repay him with her body. An indescribable shyness welled up in her heart. She used to look at Jiang Xiu's face without fear, but now she didn't have the courage to raise her head to look at him. Su Ying used a mosquito-like voice to say, "Yui, why did you take the risk to save me?" Jiang Xiu said, "Could it be that I was supposed to watch them take you away?" Su Ying suddenly frowned, revealing a pained expression. When she was about to escape, she suffered a blow from the other party. That blow wasn't light at all. Jiang Xiu's voice sounded in her ears. "What do you plan to do?" Su Ying said, "I have to return to Vermilion Bird Tower." "You still want to go back?" Su Ying said, "Leaving without permission after entering the Vermilion Bird Tower is a serious crime that will result in the extermination of the entire clan. Even though my father's official position isn't low and he has some authority, he can't be compared to Ming Luo at all. Moreover, I have a reason to go back." Su Ying's brows furrowed tighter and tighter, and her bright eyes gradually became blurry. Many double images of Jiang Xiu appeared, and in the end, she fell headfirst into Jiang Xiu's embrace. Su Ying. Her back was emitting a faint black smoke. She was injured, and it looked like her injury wasn't light. Jiang Xiu forcefully tore open her back, and there was an obvious black palm print in the middle of her silky smooth back. The black smoke was coming from the black palm print. Mingsha was restrained by water. Jiang Xiu dug a hole, and drew water into the hole. He then removed Su Ying's clothes and placed her in the hole. He then boiled the water and used the boiling water to expel the mana that had entered Mingsha's body. Chapter 702. Mingsha's power was very close to the Great Tao of Destruction. In a sense, it was one of them, but it also had some power that the Great Tao of Destruction did not. As long as it touched the skin, the dermic powers would rush to the heart. If that palm was not heavy, Su Ying's heart would have exploded, and then her entire body would be destroyed by the dermic powers. Jiang Xiu's cultivation of the heavenly water Tao was his weakness, whether it was immortal cultivation or now. Fortunately, these two Mingsha's cultivation was limited. Otherwise, he would have lost in front of the immortal king. Su Ying sat in the puddle. The boiling water below kept surging up, making popping sounds as if it was boiling a living person. The surface of the water was gradually dyed black by the dermic powers that were forced out of the body. Su Ying's beautiful face was also white and black, but the black color gradually faded. Her complexion became better and better, and the color of the water became darker. In the end, Su Ying's face no longer appeared black, and her face gradually became rosy. In a daze, she felt her whole body unbearably hot. She opened her eyes and saw Jiang Xiu beside the fire. Then, she felt that something was wrong. Looking down, her expression changed drastically. Her body was faintly discernible in the water. She cried out involuntarily and hurriedly covered her chest. Jiang Xiu said, so noisy. "It's not like I haven't seen it before. People always come and leave naked." Su Ying's pretty face was crimson red, and she coolly turned her face away. However, the coolness only lasted for a moment, and her face quickly became unnatural. How could she be at ease with a strange man beside her without any clothes on? "Don't turn your face away," Jiang Xiu said. "Am I not being shameless? Sit a little further away." Jiang Xiu felt helpless and moved his but a few seats to the side. "Sit a little further away." Su Ying's voice carried a sob. Although she knew that Jiang Xiu was saving her, she still felt wronged and even more embarrassed. Jiang Xiu stood up and walked towards the distant sea. However, as soon as he left, the bonfire suddenly went out. The bonfire seemed to be connected to a puddle. As the boiling water disappeared, the fire burned, and the boiling water slowly calmed down. The temperature of the water dropped very quickly. Only then did Su Ying retract her fierce gaze shyly and resentfully. Now that her vigilance was lifted, a strong sense of exhaustion came over her. She almost fainted again, and let herself lean against the sand pit. The water was very hot, making it difficult for her to breathe. She slowly fell asleep again. In her daze, Su Ying seemed to see Jiang Xiu. She felt that something was wrong with her. She seemed to be in a strange place, as if she was in an illusory time. Jiang Xiu said, "You don't have to look. This is the mental world of meditation, which is the place you want to come out of." Suing said, "Then how did you get in?" Jiang Xiu said, "Because I planted a seed of Tao in your heart." Seed of Tao? What is that? Suing was very confused. What was happening in front of her eyes was completely unheard of. Jiang Xiu said, "Seed of Tao, this is a secret of the sect. It is not appropriate to tell you. Just treat it as if you are in a dream. Focus on your mind. Let me heal you first." Suing looked left and right at herself. She crossed her arms in front of her chest. "Are you lying to me? How can you heal me in a dream?" Jiang Xiu said, "Have you ever heard of someone being scared to death?" Suing nodded. These people who were scared to death were not attacked. However, they believed that they were attacked, and the damage done to them was real. This is the so-called psychological crime. The psychological affects the physical. Pooh. Suing suddenly spat out a mouthful of black blood. When it fell into the water, green smoke rose from the water. She opened her eyes wide and woke up. Her eyes were full of shock. She looked around but did not see Jiang Xiu's shadow. There was a figure standing by the distant shore. It should be him. His hands were behind his back. In the dark night, he looked very mysterious. He really forced out Ming Sha's Fa. She had never heard of such a method of saving someone. She suddenly thought of something. "Hey, can I ask you for a favor?" Jiang Xiu slowly turned around. Suing had already come out of the puddle. She was dressed neatly. Her small face was flushed red and her clear eyes carried a bit of shyness. She did not know that this added a fatal charm to her charm. "What is it?" Suing said. "Can you save someone who has gone crazy?" Jiang Xiu knew that Suing was obviously talking about Shui Wuyao. If he could save him, why would he go through so much trouble to find an immortal doctor? It was not easy for him to plant a seed of Tao in him. He could only do it when he was weak and confused. Although Shui Wuyao had gone crazy, his sword cultivation had increased greatly. His xenophobia was stronger than usual. How could he plant a seed of Tao? Moreover, even if he planted a seed of Tao, he did not know how to treat a crazy person. This kind of thing needed to be done professionally. "There's no other way." The smile on Su Ying's face immediately disappeared. The sea breeze blew her hair into a mess. She reached out and brushed it aside. "Oh, thank you for today. But I have to go." Jiang Xiu said, "Are you going back to the Sparrow Tower?" "Yes." Suing nodded. "I have to go back. If I don't go back, it will be very troublesome. I still have things to do." She looked at Jiang Xiu. Her gaze became hesitant. She was no longer as resolute as before. She even hoped that Jiang Xiu could persuade her to stay. If Jiang Xiu really persuaded her to stay, she did not know if she would have the courage to go to that disgusting place again. Jiang Xiu said, "Can you guarantee that Ming Luo will not kill you if you go back?" Suing said, "I can't. I have to get someone to send a message home first. Then I have to get my father to mediate. Then I will show myself. This matter can only be blown out of proportion. If you blow it out of proportion, I won't have a chance." Jiang Xiu nodded slightly. Suing was indeed a very intelligent girl. She knew what to do very quickly. What was even rarer was her persistence in pursuing her goals. This was a very rare quality. Whether a person was successful or not, this was a very important factor. Back then, Jiang Xiu did not understand on earth. So he was muddle-headed and wandered around. He treated his marriage with Chenglingsu as his life-saving straw. Perhaps Jiang Xiu did love Chenglingsu back then. However, if Chenglingsu was just an ordinary girl, and did not come from a rich family, Jiang Xiu was not sure if he would not hold on to it. Perhaps he would. But now that he thought about it, he did treat this marriage as his life-saving straw. "If you don't want to go, I can help you." Suing smiled, revealing her spotlessly white teeth. Her mood became a bit more relaxed. However, she still said, "You won't be able to help me. The power that I'm facing is too powerful. Although you seem to possess the strength of an upper heavenly deity, which could be considered to be pretty good, when compared to them, the disparity is simply too great." Jiang Xiu said. Is that so? Suing said. Your personality is a little arrogant. I can see that you have been very outstanding all this time. However, you have not seen what a true expert looks like. If you did, you would not be like this now. Jiang Xiu said. Then what should I be like? Jiang Xiu, I have to go. I really have to go. At this moment, there was a faint light at the horizon of the sea. She knew that the sunrise was coming soon. It was not early anymore. She walked off into the distance. After walking for several hundred meters, she saw that Jiang Xiu didn't say anything, nor did he urge her to stay. She was a bit reluctant to part with him. She looked back one last time before finally disappearing into the still dark sky. After a while, she shouted at Jiang Xiu. Ignorance is arrogance. Jiang Xiu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Not long after, under the horizon of the sea, the sun rose into the sky. The light chased away the darkness, and the sky suddenly brightened. Jiang Xiu walked onto the street. The city also began to bustle. Not long after, people came and went. It was a bustling scene. A person walked past him. The reason why Jiang Xiu felt strange was because the person's aura was very strong. The people on the street were all ordinary people. There were one or two cultivators, and they were also very weak. However, the strength of this person's aura was at the great heavenly immortal realm, or even stronger. It was possible that he was an immortal king. Perhaps it was because it was early in the morning, but he did not deliberately hide it. He was still dozing off, as if he had not yet woken up. He entered a restaurant and said, Waiter, give me breakfast. Jiang Xiu also felt hungry. He also went in and sat down. He noticed that the person ate very slowly and took very small bites. Moreover, he stopped after eating a little. He put down his chopsticks, took out some money and left. You're an adult, yet you're still eating so little? Jiang Xiu felt that he seemed to have grasped something. Chapter 703. Jiang Xiu followed them out of the restaurant. There were many people on the street, but for Jiang Xiu, these people were no different from non-existent. However, he was stunned. The person he wanted to follow had disappeared. Not only had the person disappeared, but even the aura had disappeared. Startled, he quickly walked over and put his hand on the shoulder of a woman. Judging from Jiang Xiu's perception of power and the speed of the person's footsteps, the woman should be standing in the same place as the person just now. What are you doing? Jiang Xiu saw that the person he had caught was actually a woman. Furthermore, she was an ordinary woman in her 40s. The most terrifying thing was that this woman had a mole on her chin. Furthermore, there was a strand of hair on the mole. You've got the wrong person. Jiang Xiu was really disgusted by her ugliness. It's okay. The woman smiled at him, then turned and continued to walk. Jiang Xiu immediately frowned. His perception of power and space was very sensitive. Although it was very difficult to guess and judge based on nothing, he had never failed. This had almost become an instinct of his. This was also the key to his ability to judge how many moves he could make when he lost all his cultivation on earth. There was no reason to be wrong. His marble-like face changed. He cursed in his heart. Not good, I've been deceived. His brows immediately wrinkled. However, it was good to be deceived, too good to be deceived. Originally, Jiang Xiu just felt that this person was strange. Her cultivation was so high, but she lived the life of an ordinary person and ate like a woman. She was originally a woman. Even if she changed her appearance, her appetite and habits would not change, especially when she was groggy early in the morning. And that ugly and disgusting madam should be her disguise. Putting all these together, it could be deduced that the person just now was very likely to be Ji Wuhua. This really surprised Jiang Xiu. He actually bumped into the person Suing couldn't find in 60 years on the street. However, he still got rid of her in the end. Perhaps in the entire immortal martial continent, only Ji Wuhua would be able to slip away under Jiang Luoxia's nose. It was almost impossible for Jiang Xiu to find Ji Wuhua in the city with his ability to restrain his aura and change his appearance. At that moment, Jiang Xiu missed a great opportunity. However, from the way Ji Wuhua walked on the street just now, she must have been here for a long time. She should be very familiar with this place. She is actually free. This was far beyond Jiang Xiu's expectations. He thought that Ji Wuhua had been controlled by the Nether Crossing Church and had lost her freedom, but it turned out that she had chosen to stay. Why did she stay? Was he treating a patient? However, he had lived here for many years, so it wasn't difficult to catch him. As the saying goes, a monk can run away, but the temple can't. Unless she was discovered by Jiang Xiu and felt that she had been seen through, she would give up her current identity and change her appearance. For her, after so many years, she should have been used to it. Jiang Xiu returned to the restaurant and asked the waiter about the situation. Needless to say, the person just now was called Lu Dazhuang. He was a rich man who lived in the Lu mansion at the end of the street and would come to his restaurant for breakfast every day. He was a regular customer. When Jiang Xiu asked the waiter what Lu Dazhuang did for a living, the waiter couldn't say. He just said that Lu Dazhuang seemed to be very rich and had an endless amount of money to spend even if he didn't work. Lu Dazhuang. No one knew what Ji Wuhua looked like. In the beginning, no one was sure whether she was a man or a woman. She seemed to be able to attack and defend. Later, someone wasted an opportunity to ask the Lingxi Pavilion to confirm that she was a woman. It's really not easy to find this person. Jiang Xiu planned to go to Ji Wuhua's residence. If she came back, he would try to see if he could ask her to help. If she could, Suing would be saved from the trouble of going to the Vermilion Bird Tower. If she couldn't, he would think about it later. When he arrived at Lu Dazhuang's residence, he was accompanied by a few servants and maids. Jiang Xiu claimed to be Lu Dazhuang's friend. Since Ji Wuhua had stayed here for so long, she should have some contact with him. It was normal for a friend to come. When the servants of the Lu mansion heard that Jiang Xiu was a guest of the master, they politely welcomed him in and entertained him with good wine and dishes. It seemed that Lu Dazhuang was very hospitable. They waited from morning to afternoon. Jiang Xiu asked the servants. Lu Dazhuang wasn't sure when he would come back, but he never spent the night outside. About evening, Jiang Xiu smiled. Finally, he didn't wait for a day in vain. A familiar aura appeared at the door. This time, it was impossible for him to slip away under Jiang Xiu's nose again. Friend. What friend? Lu Dazhuang didn't care too much. He said he was a friend of the master. He claimed to be Jiang Xiu and was waiting for you in the pavilion by the waterside. Lu Dazhuang handed his coat to the servant and walked home. He looked at Jiang Xiu along the waterside pavilion, only to find an outstanding man with his hands behind his back. A cultivator. He didn't look serious at all. Who are you? I, Lu Dazhuang, don't seem to have a friend like you. Lu Dazhuang came all the way to Jiang Xiu's back, but he didn't turn around for a long time. It seemed that he was the master of this place. This momentum was accumulated by the Changnian who was in a superior position. The timing was just right. Jiang Xiu slowly turned around. It's you. Lu Dazhuang was shocked. Immortal Dr. Ji's appearance is much more pleasing to the eye than that madam with a mole. Jiang Xiu's face was still cold and aloof. It's just that your appetite is a little small. Lu Dazhuang smiled and said, Why can't I understand what you're saying? Jiang Xiu said, Then how did you recognize me? Just now he was really shocked. It was a subconscious reaction. He didn't expect that his identity would be seen through in a hurry on the street. He didn't take it seriously at all. He thought that this person wasn't simple. Oh, we met in the restaurant. Jiang Xiu understood that a famous doctor like Ji Wuhua had long been disgusted with the various sex requests and threats. Usually he wouldn't admit his identity. If Jiang Xiu wanted to use force he could, but he would also offend Ji Wuhua and refuse to treat Xue Wuyao. Appearance can be changed but habits can't be changed. After all, women have small appetites and are full after eating a few mouthfuls. Also, you used an illusion to avoid being tracked down. Lu Dazhuang was a gentleman. He gestured for Jiang Xiu to take a seat. You might have misunderstood. I'm not the immortal Dr. Ji you're talking about. Jiang Xiu didn't need him to admit it. He said, One of my friends went crazy because he felt that he had broken his promise. He was driven crazy by despair and annoyance. He wants an immortal doctor to treat him. Lu Dazhuang said. I'm really sorry. I'm really not a man. You're a guest from afar. If you don't mind, sit down and have a cup of tea and dinner before you leave. Jiang Xiu knew that Ji Wuhua wouldn't agree so easily. Moreover, if Suing wasn't mistaken when she came, Ji Wuhua was already here. She had been here for more than 60 years. If she wanted to do something but hadn't completed it, she naturally wouldn't leave easily. Jiang Xiu looked at the person in front of him. As long as the immortal doctor is willing, you can name any conditions. Lu Dazhuang still smiled and said, You've mistaken me for someone else. Jiang Xiu frowned slightly. He, Jiang Luoxia, hadn't asked for help like this for a long time. He sighed. He was very overbearing and vicious, but he wouldn't use force to threaten a doctor. Moreover, doing so might not be useful. Lu Dazhuang said, Where are you from? Jiang Xiu said, Since you don't intend to help, why do you ask me where I'm from? Xiu Shun's anger couldn't be contained. Since immortal Dr. Ji has been loitering here for so many years, there should be unfinished business. Although I might not be able to help, it's still very easy to mess things up. He didn't need to be powerless to act shamelessly. You, Jiang Xiu said, your greatest ability is to treat patients, and you haven't failed to treat a patient for more than 60 years. Unless you did it deliberately, I can't think of any other reason. Lu Dazhuang's face gradually turned cold. Don't go too far. This was tantamount to admitting that his real identity was Ji Wuhua. In fact, he had been seen through by Jiang Xiu. It didn't matter whether he admitted it or not. Chapter 704. Although Lu Dazhuang didn't want to cause trouble, she wasn't afraid if trouble came knocking on her door. Her immortal king cultivation allowed her to take the initiative most of the time. At the very least, ordinary sex wouldn't dare to be rough with her. This was much better than the other two immortal doctors. If the person in front of her dared to be presumptuous, she didn't mind teaching him a lesson. Jiang Xiu said, Since you refuse a toast and insist on being forced to drink a forfeit, I can only fulfill your wish. Lu Dazhuang had seen too many people like this. Jiang Xiu's methods were also common, but this really touched her bottom line. She had been dormant here for so many years, and she would never allow anyone to destroy it. Lu Dazhuang was enraged. I want to help you because I owe you a favor, but it's reasonable not to help you. Why should I help you when you're not related to me? I'll give you 2 bowls of wine to drink, and you really think you're a distinguished guest. You're not welcome here, please leave. I won't see you out. Jiang Xiu didn't expect this immortal doctor's temper to be so bad. However, it seemed that all doctors had bad tempers, but he was speechless. She had fallen out with him and still dared to ask him to leave like this. Wasn't she afraid that his identity would be made public? At that time, the people who came to her for medical treatment would be enough to flatten the door of this residence. However, Jiang Xiu immediately understood that Ji Wuhua would probably abandon this place after he left. Jiang Xiu stood up. In that case, we'll meet again. Looking at Jiang Xiu's back as he left, Lu Dazhuang muttered to herself. Jiang Xiu gave her a very strange feeling. This person's power was evident from the fact that no one could find her for so many years, but Jiang Xiu could find her just by meeting him on the street. It was a pity that she didn't ask about his background, otherwise, it would be easier to deal with him. Jiang Xiu walked out of Ji Wuhua's house and disappeared. When he reappeared, night had already fallen. Every house was lit up, and it was peaceful and warm. He saw that Lu Dazhuang had dismissed the servants and was very generous with his money. After that, he also walked out of the manor. His eyes flashed, and the powerful divine sense of an immortal king scanned the surroundings. The aura of the few immortal cultivators didn't seem to be the same as the one he saw today. Hence he walked forward. His body was covered in smoke, and when he came out again, it was a handsome young man dressed in brocade robes. If Jiang Xiu deliberately hid his aura now, there wouldn't be many people who could find him. I'm a woman's after all. The handsome young man walked in the city for a long time, and entered an official residence. The manservant at the door bowed to him. Young master, you're back. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. Ji Wuhua dismissed the servants under Lu Dazhuang's identity, and also ordered the housekeeper to sell the residence, creating the illusion that she had left Mingdu. Indeed, anyone who saw others selling their houses and dismissing their servants would think that they had left. However, Ji Wuhua didn't expect that Suing had been looking for her for more than 60 years. Jiang Xiu knew that she had stayed in Mingdu for at least 60 years, and would never leave before she accomplished her task. In the morning of the next day, Ji Wuhua, who had disguised herself as a handsome young man, went out. Jiang Xiu followed behind him. He walked leisurely as if he was strolling in his own garden. However, his figure was illusory and formless. It was as if many figures were passing through time and space. It was very mysterious. Ji Wuhua's tracking skill completely hid his aura, which had a great connection with the great Tao of space. In the past, Jiang Xiu could detect him when he used the Immortal King realm. Now that Jiang Xiu had mastered the law of space, it was impossible for Ji Wuhua to detect him. He followed Ji Wuhua all the way to the gate of the palace. He saw that Ji Wuhua, who was originally a handsome young man, had transformed into an old man with white hair and a white beard. He was also wearing an official's robe. Guardian. Jiang Xiu was slightly moved. Ji Wuhua even pretended to be a guardian of the Mingdu cult. She was up to something big. If there was no accident, it should be related to the sect master of the Mingdu cult. Jiang Xiu couldn't go in anymore. Although the Mingdu cult was nothing in Jiang Xiu's eyes, there must be a special array in the palace of the Vatican. Once he cast a spell, it would be detected. After stopping here, Jiang Xiu turned back. He went to the mansion of the young man in the brocade robe. After asking someone, he found out that the young man was called Yi Chengfeng. Following the pattern, Jiang Xiu went to the Yi mansion and claimed to be Yi Chengfeng's friend. However, the manservant here said that the young master didn't come back often and might not be able to wait for him. Lu Dazhuang's identity couldn't be used anymore. Jiang Xiu knew that Ji Wuhua would definitely come back, so he said that he had made an appointment with brother Yi to wait for him at home. The manservant saw him and invited him in. Just like in Lu Dazhuang's mansion, the manservants entertained Jiang Xiu with good wine and meat. Jiang Xiu thought that if he didn't have money to eat in the future, he could rely on swindling to make a living. He could also eat and drink well. About the same time as yesterday, Yi Chengfeng came back in the afternoon. Jiang Xiu felt his aura at the door and showed a faint smile. What friend? Yi Chengfeng frowned and walked in suspiciously. A familiar scene appeared in front of her eyes. Jiang Xiu was standing in the pavilion with his hands behind his back. Hearing his calm footsteps, it was as if everything was under his control. Jiang Xiu slowly turned around with an indifferent and cold expression. His gaze had been lingering on the fish in the pond from the beginning to the end. When he turned around, he retracted his gaze and looked at Yi Chengfeng. It's you again. Yi Chengfeng was furious. Jiang Xiu said, Yes, it's me again. I came to find the immortal doctor for the same matter. I want to ask the immortal doctor to save a crazy friend. As long as the immortal doctor is willing to help, I won't disturb you again. No one liked being threatened. As one of the 3 most famous immortal doctors in the immortal martial continent, Yi Chengfeng had her own temper. However, Jiang Xiu's methods made her feel a chill in her heart. She felt like she was being targeted by a lone wolf. Even if she changed her identity and appearance, she still couldn't avoid this guy. How did you find me? Jiang Xiu said, When I saw you coming out of the Lu mansion, I changed into Yi Chengfeng's appearance and activated Yi Chengfeng's identity. He didn't try to hide anything and directly revealed his own details without pretending to be mysterious. Yi Chengfeng lightly smiled and cursed in her heart. Fool, now that I know how you deal with me, I have a way to deal with it. I'll say it again. I'm not an immortal doctor, and I don't have a friend like you. Please leave. Jiang Xiu said. Immortal Dr. Ji, don't be anxious. I haven't finished speaking yet. Yi Chengfeng turned her face to the side as if she was very impatient. She was also very disdainful of Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu's indifferent voice sounded in her ears. From a woman's point of view, Jiang Xiu's voice was very pleasant to listen to. He was also very good-looking and had a transcendent aura. However, he just had to be so annoying. Jiang Xiu said. However, I didn't expect that Yi Chengfeng would turn into an old man. The disciples of the Nether Crossing cult would even call you Elder. Buzz. Yi Chengfeng suddenly turned her head. Her face could no longer remain calm as she angrily said, "You followed me? Careless, too careless." As an immortal king, she naturally didn't take Jiang Xiu seriously. She even thought that Lu Dazhuang would be able to get rid of her after dismissing his servants and selling his home. She didn't expect this to happen. She could give up any other identity, but she definitely couldn't give up the identity of an elder. However, this fatal identity was discovered by Jiang Xiu. She lowered her voice and angrily said, "What exactly do you want?" "I've already stated my origins." Yi Chengfeng fiercely cursed. This beautiful young man actually revealed a rare feminine side. This was truly infuriating. Otherwise, she definitely wouldn't have revealed her true appearance. Her eyes turned. She was currently being threatened by Jiang Xiu and said, "I can agree to your conditions. However, I have a condition. You have to wait for me for a while. I still have very important things to do." Jiang Xiu slightly frowned and said, "How long do you need?" "I can't wait too long." The other party had prepared for more than 60 years and still hadn't succeeded. He didn't have the patience to wait another 60 years. He also didn't want Xue Wuyao to suffer the pain of insanity. Yi Chengfeng said, "I can't guarantee this." Jiang Xiu said, "Then why don't immortal Dr. Ji treat my friend first?" However, she resolutely shook her head and said, "I can't leave this place. If you can wait, then wait. If you can't, then find someone else. If you want to fight to the death, then forgive me for not being able to do as you wish." Chapter 705. Many commoners couldn't buy a house even after working their entire lives, but to some people, they could buy a house with just a few minutes of work. Therefore, Jiang Xiu said, "Can you tell me about immortal Dr. Ji's difficulties? Maybe I can help a little." Yi Chengfeng sized up Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu surprised her, but it was only a surprise. She thought she was careless and underestimated Jiang Xiu. However, immortals look down on gods, so she didn't take Jiang Xiu seriously. She also didn't think that Jiang Xiu could help with what she was doing now. He shook his head. Jiang Xiu also understood that many things involved privacy and couldn't be revealed. It would be troublesome. The other party had already agreed to help. They just needed to wait, but Jiang Xiu didn't want to wait. At this moment, a commotion came from outside. Yi Chengfeng's Yi clan was also a large clan in Mingdu, so they were the first to hear the news. Su clan's Miss Suing had escaped from Vermilion Bird Tower, because Ming Lua wanted to kill the so-called potential enemy in the cradle. Su clan wanted to protect themselves, so the matter was blown out of proportion. Hearing the commotion outside, Yi Chengfeng called for a servant and found out. Ming Luo is really ruthless. He wants to ruin a person who hasn't even received the cult master's favor because of her beauty. He wants to sully her reputation. As a woman, Yi Chengfeng was incomparably angry. Jiang Xiu secretly shook his head. The matter happened 2 nights ago, and it was only now that it was exposed. It could be seen that this Lord Su was only SOSO. Jiang Xiu said, "Immortal Dr. Ji wants to help this Miss Su." Yi Chengfeng realized that she had made a mistake, so she restrained her anger and smiled. "I can intervene in these matters, but it's just that I feel a little disdainful." Ji Wuhua's other impersonator was a protector of the Mingdu cult, whose position was above the 12 earthly fiends. If she wanted to, she could definitely intervene. She probably didn't want to complicate things. Jiang Xiu asked, "I wonder if immortal Dr. Ji thinks that the Su clan can seek justice?" Yi Chengfeng returned to his seat and took a sip from his wine cup. "Of course not. The Su family plays politics, but it's not even worth mentioning in front of the 12 earthly fiends that the Dark Crossing cult relies on the most. To put it simply, without the Su family, the Dark Crossing cult has no effect at all. Without the power of Ming Luo, one of the 12 earthly fiends, the Dark Crossing cult's overall power will drop by a lot. If it were anyone else, the sect master of the Nether Crossing cult would make the same choice." Jiang Xiu smiled slightly. Just as he thought, from the perspective of a superior who had to face external enemies at the highest level. This was not a problem at all. The answer was clear as day, but those involved could not see clearly. It was just like a small employee in a company who did not understand what the boss was thinking. Different positions would see different things. The noise gradually faded away. "Your Honor, are you planning to stay for dinner?" Jiang Xiu said. "There's nowhere to go." How could he not hear that Ji Wuhua was asking him to leave? However, Jiang Xiu pretended not to understand. How hateful. Yi Chengfeng furrowed his brows in anger. He was secretly shameless. He realized that he could not be polite to Jiang Xiu. This guy was insatiable. "But I don't have any food prepared for guests." "Your Honor, please help yourself." All right, he didn't give him any face and gave the order to chase him away. Jiang Xiu only stood up. He brushed off some petals on his body and said, "Immortal doctors have strange tempers. Forget it, it's not difficult to find a place to eat." After saying that, Jiang Xiu turned around and left. Looking at his back, Yi Chengfeng cursed again. "Bastard." After leaving the Yi residence, Jiang Xiu went straight to the Su residence. "This one is Jiang Xiu. I'm here to pay a visit to young Miss Su." Today, there were not as many people in front of the Su residence as before. Since young Miss Su had gone to the Vermilion Bird Tower, most of her pursuers had given up. "My family's young miss is not receiving guests," Jiang Xiu said. "We made an appointment." Hearing him say this, the servant went back to report. When Suing heard that Jiang Xiu had come, she was astonished. "Why is he here? He even came to my door in public." However, she was even more surprised. Without any hesitation, she said, "Quickly invite him in." When Suing saw this man again, her heart was not calm. However, she did not want him to see it. With a cold face, she said, "Guangxing, why did you come to find me again? Didn't I tell you not to come find me again?" Jiang Xiu was stunned. He had saved her twice with a big smile. Yet she had this kind of attitude. Suing waved her hand and said disdainfully, "Forget it. Since you're already here, why did you come to find me?" Jiang Xiu said, "Is this how you receive guests? You haven't eaten yet?" Suing widened her beautiful eyes and said, "You can't be thinking of coming to my house to eat, right?" Jiang Xiu secretly shook his head. If Suing wasn't Xue Wuyao's adopted daughter, he really wouldn't want to get involved in this mess. He opened his mouth and said, "A meal in exchange for your life. Is this a loss?" "I'm here to save you," Suing said. "Why are you scaring people for a meal? Is this appropriate?" The blue veins on Jiang Xiu's forehead were about to pop out. Forget it. Since you're here, I'll treat you to a meal." She was really generous. She invited Jiang Xiu to a banquet in the courtyard. "Say it. How did you save my life?" Suing knew that a smart person like Jiang Xiu would not come to her door for no reason. However, she could not help but make trouble for him. Her heart was filled with joy. Jiang Xiu drank a mouthful of wine. "Your Su family making a big fuss is indeed the only way to save you. However, Su family is not as important as Ming Luo in the eyes of Ming Du's leader. In the end, the Su family will be the one to suffer." Suing said, "Humph. Ming Luo is persecuting the leader's woman. Could it be that the leader is also a man? How can he tolerate this kind of behavior that crosses the line?" Jiang Xiu shook his head. "You don't understand how a leader who has to face an external enemy thinks. Women are luxuries in their eyes, but Ming Luo is unobtainable." He said it quite tactfully. He did not directly say that the leader only treated beautiful women as playthings. However, which ambitious and ruthless person was not like this? Would they blame their general for a woman? Absolutely not. Liu Bei even threw his own son, let alone a woman he had never met before. Suing frowned. Although she was uncomfortable, she felt that Jiang Xiu's words made sense. She slowly calmed down. Jiang Xiu said, "Of course, the leader will not reveal the truth to the world. He will only distort the truth. When the time comes, the unlucky one will be your Su family. In order to protect yourself, I'm afraid the unlucky one will be you." Jiang Xiu had overestimated Lord Su's power. When he found out that Lord Su only let the news spread throughout the city 2 days later, He knew that Lord Su was not as important as Ming Luo. Su Ying's gaze was fixed on Jiang Xiu. What do you mean? Jiang Xiu looked at her with cold eyes. In the end, Su family will only push you out for the sake of so many people. According to Ming Du's way of doing things, you will be executed. Su Ying stood up from her seat with a whoosh. The wine cups on the table were knocked to the ground. She looked at Jiang Xiu while breathing heavily. The servant who came to deliver the food and wine bumped into Lord Su on his way back. Lord Su asked, "Who are the food and wine for?" The servant said, "Master, there is a young master outside who claims to be Jiang Xiu. He is meeting with the young miss." Young master? Lord Su was feeling vexed. His family had met with great trouble. No matter what, they had offended one of the 12 earthly fiends, Ming Luo. These 12 earthly fiends were rumored to be either the cult master's children or disciples. Their statuses were revered, but he was absolutely unwilling to let his daughter be defiled by others. Now he wholeheartedly planned to complain to the cult master. "You dare to pester my daughter? You really don't know the meaning of death." Lord Su's face darkened. If this matter was spread out, it would only add to the storm. He strode toward Su Ying's small building. From afar, he could see the lights in the courtyard. Opposite the long table, there was a young man who looked to be in his 20s or 30s. "Father." Su Ying saw him first. Lord Su responded, "Are you Xiao Ying's friend?" Jiang Xiu nodded. "Yes, that's right." This Lord Su was very stylish. He looked at Jiang Xiu indifferently and said in an unfriendly tone, "Come with me. I have something to say to you." There were two old men following behind him, and it seemed that their cultivation levels were not low. "Father, don't make things difficult for him." Lord Su said, "Father knows what to do." Chapter 706. Lord Su called Jiang Xiu to the side. From the first time he saw Jiang Xiu, he felt disgust. This disgust wasn't because of Jiang Xiu, but because he disliked any boy who walked with his daughter. This was because his daughter was going to become the sect leader's woman, and one day, even the mother of the world. How could she have any interaction with an ordinary boy? Standing by the pond, Lord Su looked at Jiang Xiu with disdain and said, "You like my daughter, so you want to pursue her?" Jiang Xiu was speechless and wanted to laugh. This was really a joke. "Brat, don't be delusional. My daughter will definitely return to the Sparrow Tower and become the sect leader's woman. She is one of the new top 10 beauties, so she is destined to not be an ordinary person. Do you understand what I mean?" Jiang Xiu smiled. This time, other than the so-called top 10 beauties of the Green Spirit Mountain, there were also the so-called top 10 geniuses. However, not a single one of them made it to the top of the Green Spirit Mountain list this time. Luli was the only one who was truly famous among the top 10 beauties. Moreover, this list was changed every 10 years. For mortals, 10 years might be a long time, but for immortal cultivators, 10 years was a long time. According to Jiang Xiu's age of 4,000 years, an ordinary person would be 100 years old. Changing the list every 2.5 months. Could this still be considered a list? Was this destined to not be ordinary? As for you, brat, Xiaoying isn't someone like you can have extravagant hopes for. Lord Su said with a sigh, as if he didn't feel sad for Jiang Xiu and the others. Jiang Xiu said, "Oh, is that so?" Lord Su said, "I know you are unconvinced, but don't say things like don't bully a poor youth. You are still young, so you don't know the outside world, what kind of attitude the strong have, and how they can control the fates of ordinary people. Right now you are unconvinced and think that you are very good. You are so arrogant that you can shout to the heavens that one day, I will make you regret it." He patted Jiang Xiu's shoulder and said, "Ignorance leads to arrogance. If you stand high one day, you will realize how laughable it was for you to have such thoughts in the past. People need to understand reverence to be able to go further." He pointed to the distance. "That is the palace where the sect leader lives. Do you feel the pressure in your face? Feel the unattainable distance?" Lord Su's expression was serious and filled with reverence. How many people dream of setting foot there? They fought for it their whole lives, but can't even touch the door? Face reality. Lord Su slowly turned his head and said to Jiang Xiu, "Tell me, what are your conditions for you to disappear from Xiao Ying's world forever? Official position, secret techniques, and money." Jiang Xiu's eyes gradually turned cold. What an arrogant fellow. However, Jiang Xiu wouldn't go so far as to tell him that he was the Sky Motion Sect's sect master. That would be too embarrassing. No one would expose their own name. If a so-called superstar met a commoner who didn't know him, and the commoner didn't buy his words, then he pointed at himself and said, "I'm a superstar." That scene would be as stupid as it could get. This person wasn't Su Ying's real father. Jiang Xiu turned and left. "Lord, this person is too presumptuous." The old man next to him had a cold expression. "Humph, he's just an ignorant person." For the sake of his pitiful backbone, he missed a chance to rise in his life. Lord Su shook his head secretly. He didn't mention that he had been rebuffed. Instead, he seemed to feel sorry for Jiang Xiu. Another old man also said, "To be able to get some help from Lord TSK. This kid will probably regret it until his intestines turn green." Lord Su's expression turned cold. "Of course. Do you think this Lord's opportunity is given casually?" Jiang Xiu didn't go to see Suing again. Instead, he left the Su residence and landed on a roof somewhere. After the Ghost Orchid Festival, there would be a sacrificial hall in the Netherworld Church. The leader would patrol the palace. This would be the biggest festival in the Netherworld Church. The Su family would probably make things difficult for Ming Luo on this point. They would announce Ming Luo's ugly behavior in front of the world and fight for a chance to win. Ming Luo would definitely not give the Su family a chance to take advantage of. Therefore, Jiang Xiu guessed that he would send people to kill Suing. The night was beautiful. The lights in the city waned. There was an indescribable hazy feeling, as if heaven and earth were covered with a layer of soft light. Until late at night, 2 clouds of black smoke floated over from the distant horizon. Ming Sha. It was Ming Luo's 2 subordinates. "You've come earlier than expected." Under the full moon, the starry sky flashed, and a person suddenly appeared in front of them. The night wind blew his hair, and his clothes fluttered. "Who are you?" One of them, Ming Sha, spoke. His voice was very low. Jiang Xiu opened his mouth and said, "You want to go to the Su family to kill someone?" Ming Sha said, "You're a bodyguard hired by the Su family?" Jiang Xiu said, "Not really, but you can't touch Suing. Immediately scram back or die here." "Ha ha ha." Ming Sha laughed. His laughter was like a ghost's cry in the middle of the night. "You're courting death." His body suddenly flashed and he rushed over with black smoke. Ming Sha's strength was very strong. This was recognized in the immortal martial continent. However, they didn't know that the person standing in front of them was actually the Tianqing school's sect master, Jiang Luoxia. A fierce sword slashed out. The surging Ming Sha crashed towards Jiang Xiu. However, the powerful sword and the super corrosive power of Ming Sha couldn't even touch Jiang Xiu's skin. It was blocked by the faint light on his body. The sword light slashed onto his body and collapsed on the spot. "What's wrong?" Ming Sha's eyes widened in shock. He looked at Jiang Xiu as if he was looking at a monster. The sword slashed onto his body and the sword light collapsed. They realized that they had met an expert. "Who are you?" Jiang Xiu's eyes were cold. He lightly spat out, "You don't have the qualifications." A golden talisman seal in his hand flew towards Ming Sha's forehead. With a whoosh, it disappeared into Ming Sha's head. Boom. A cloud of black smoke exploded on the spot. Even his corpse didn't exist. "Run." The other Ming Sha was so frightened that he transformed into a ball of flames on the spot and started burning. It was actually the flame-drawing escape technique. Although it was far from being comparable to Jiang Xiu's heavenly fire traversing heaven technique, as long as there was a flame in the distance, he would be able to escape. And the range of the escape depended on one's cultivation. Some people could see as far as 10 miles away from a village. The Vermilion Bird Tower was only a short distance away from the Su residence. On the ascending Sparrow Tower, Min Luo was holding the transfer order and speaking to the Imperial Guard beside him. "Cult Master will be patrolling the heavens tomorrow to offer sacrifices to the Nether Water Calamity. That's our sect's most valuable treasure, There can't be a single mistake. If there's even the slightest mistake, all of our heads will roll. Yes. At this moment, the flame of the oil lamp on his long table flickered. The image of the escaping Ming Sha appeared, and was about to flash out. He's back? Ming Luo was slightly surprised. He moved so quickly. Is it done? However, in the image of Ming Sha in the flame, his face was contorted in pain and fear. He seemed to be shouting something, but his voice couldn't be heard. Immediately after, he seemed to be dragged out by some kind of force. The image disappeared in the flame. Only a drop of blood landed on the flame. With a sizzling sound, it emitted a pungent smell of blood. With a swoosh, Ming Luo stood up from his seat. He clenched his fists tightly. How dare you kill my people? He was also very shocked. The other party actually forcefully broke Ming Sha's escape technique and killed him when he was executing it. This required a very high level of cultivation in the fire escape technique to be able to do it. Ming Sha was a heaven immortal. If the other party forcefully killed him, his strength might have reached the level of a great heaven immortal. How could he be on the same level as him? The Su family actually invited such an expert? Ming Luo's face was ashen. General, do you want me to wait? Ming Luo waved his hand. No need. The other party's cultivation isn't low to be able to stop the fire escape technique and kill Ming Sha. Even if you go, you won't be able to do anything unless I do it personally. He was confident in his identity. In addition, if the news of him taking action was leaked, the situation would be very bad. Tomorrow's matter is more important. Although Ming Luo was worried that the Su family would cause trouble in the sky patrolling the heavens tomorrow, with his position in the netherworld, it wasn't something that this pair of father and daughter could move. If they exposed him in front of the cult leader, he would at most be scolded by the cult leader. This wasn't a big deal. Chapter 707. Dark Water Calamity. Through Ming Sha's escape technique, Jiang Xiu saw Ming Luo's group from the flame and heard their conversation. A familiar name. He remembered, one of the 5 heavenly water sources, the Dark Water Calamity, was actually a water calamity. Because of Ming Du, there were only 5 drops of heavenly water sources, and this water calamity was one of them. Because of Ming Du's cultivation system, everyone was afraid, and so was the sect master of Ming Du. However, he controlled one of the 5 heavenly water sources, the water calamity, which just happened to overcome this weakness. Therefore, he was superior to everyone else. For such an important day to survey the heavens, of course he had to guard it strictly. In the past, when he was an immortal cultivator, Jiang Xiu did not understand heavenly water and only scratched the surface. The main reason was that the Tao of water was too gentle and did not match Jiang Xiu's nature. However, he also knew that the water calamity was not ordinary. It could not be tolerated by heaven and earth and had to be punished. The sect master of Ming Du's heavenly survey was probably to help the water calamity avoid the calamity. Jiang Xiu knew about this from the Lingxi Pavilion. At that time, he did not have any enmity with the Lingxi Pavilion. One calamity took 300 years. In other words, such a heavenly survey only happened once every 300 years. The water calamity is a precious treasure. Could it be Ji Wuhua's goal for so many years? When Jiang Xiu thought about this, he had an idea. His great god sealing technique, the 6 weapons unifying Tao, left the stone tablet. The 6 weapons contain the water path, and his progress on the heavenly water law could only be described as pitiful. If he could obtain the water calamity, he could obtain all the laws contained in it, and his strength would soar greatly. The 6 weapons were time, space, wind, fire, water, and earth. What he was investigating now was the last step of fire. The laws of water and earth had not been started for long. If he could integrate the heavenly water law into his natal Dharma artifact, he would have taken a big step to erect the God-sealing monument. Only the laws of earth and heavenly fire were left. It was just around the corner. Thinking about this, Jiang Xiu could not help but feel excited. He bought 2 bottles of sake from the winery and hooked the wine jar with a rope before going to Yi Qingfeng's house. When he arrived, the lights inside were dim, and a graceful figure was cast on the window, causing one's imagination to run wild. This should be Ji Wuhua's true face. Who is it? Yi Qingfeng shouted harshly. Me. Jiang Xiu sat on the opposite roof. The next moment he saw Yi Qingfeng flying over with his white clothes fluttering in the wind. Yi Qingfeng's sword-like eyebrows were furrowed, and he looked at Jiang Xiu vigilantly. He seemed to be very angry. Judging from her various expressions, Jiang Xiu guessed that she might have revealed her true appearance just now. Although he didn't see it clearly, he only saw an outline. It was probably the first time that Ji Wuhua was seen by someone. Jiang Xiu said, "Why are you glaring at me so fiercely? Sit down." He even threw a jar of wine over. Yi Qingfeng said, "You want me to forgive your offense with just a pot of cheap roadside wine?" Jiang Xiu said, "Did I offend you?" Yi Qingfeng coldly looked at him and sat down. At this moment, he was an elegant and beautiful youth. Moreover, arguing with this scoundrel would not lead to any results. "What are you doing here again?" Jiang Xiu said. "Tomorrow Mingdu will teach the Heaven Patrol a lesson. With such a grand scene, I want to invite you to..." "Stop." Yi Qingfeng rudely interrupted. "Jiang Xiu, right? I don't seem to be familiar with you at all. I have already made a concession. Now you only need to wait. Since I have promised to save your friend, I will definitely fulfill my promise." Jiang Xiu coldly looked at him and said indifferently, "I only want to invite immortal Dr. Ji to celebrate the festival together. Why do you have to be so fierce and reject me?" Yi Qingfeng said, "I will tell you clearly now that I am not willing." Jiang Xiu said, "Tomorrow does immortal Dr. Ji have something to do, or do I need to give you an explanation?" Jiang Xiu said, "Originally, I wasn't sure either. However, for immortal Dr. Ji to stay in Mingdu, a place that doesn't have enough spiritual energy for so many years, she definitely has an unusual goal. Until your intense reaction just now, I think my guess shouldn't be wrong. You are here for Mingdu's treasure, the dark water tribulation, right?" The anger on Yi Qingfeng's face gradually disappeared and his eyes flashed. "Don't speak nonsense. I am not here for this matter." Jiang Xiu said, "Then what is it for?" Yi Qingfeng couldn't reply and angrily said, "Do I need to explain to you what I want to do?" The night was very beautiful. The lights dimmed and the wind on the roof was very strong, blowing Jiang Xiu's clothes. He raised his wine jug and drank a few mouthfuls. "Don't be so hostile towards me. I just want to ask you to treat my illness. You can say that I am your patient's family. I just want to get close to you." Jiang Xiu turned his head and looked over. "Perhaps I can even help?" Yi Qingfeng found that Jiang Xiu was very hard to deal with. It seemed that no matter how much he tried to hide, he couldn't escape his eyes. He could only sit down patiently and drink a few mouthfuls of wine. Jiang Xiu's voice entered his ears. "Actually, it isn't hard to guess. Immortal Dr. Ji is an immortal king and has outstanding strength. However, the possibility of snatching the dark water tribulation from Mingdu's sect master is close to zero. Using the identity of a protector and starting to set up a trap is indeed a good method. It is just that it wastes a bit of time." Yi Qingfeng's expression was a bit ugly. "If you continue to speak nonsense, our agreement will be cancelled." Jiang Xiu said, "Tomorrow is an important day. It only happens once every 300 years. If you miss this chance, you will have to wait another 300 years. Why would you cancel the agreement?" "I already said that I can help you." Yi Qingfeng really couldn't win against this scoundrel. He sighed and drank a few mouthfuls of wine before saying, "I did come from the dark water tribulation." She suspected that Jiang Xiu was one of Mingdu's people. However, if the sect master suspected her, as long as there was even a trace of doubt, he would eliminate it without hesitation. Therefore, Jiang Xiu shouldn't be one of the sect master's people. He could really be someone who was seeking medical treatment. Since Jiang Xiu saw through the matter, she could only accept it. Jiang Xiu said, "This is really difficult." Yi Qingfeng remained silent. He wouldn't tell Jiang Xiu his plan. Jiang Xiu sighed and said, "I originally thought that immortal Dr. Ji was above worldly matters. I didn't expect that you would put in so much effort for worldly matters. Could it be that you encountered a problem in your cultivation that you can't solve, so you can only rely on the dark water tribulation?" Yi Qingfeng shook his head. His eyes were a bit dim. In the distance, the tallest and brightest building in the city was the Sparrow Tower. At this moment, it was still lit, as if it was thinking about something. Immortal Dr. G has saved countless people in your life. Why didn't you ask a few people who have received your kindness to help you? Why did you put in so much effort? If you failed, the pain and regret would be hard to accept. Jiang Xiu believed that with Immortal Dr. G's medical skills, it wouldn't be difficult to find a few immortal kings to help him steal the water tribulation. Moreover, this method was more reliable than using a scheme. If there was a slight mistake in a scheme, all would be for naught. But if it was a simple and crude method of stealing and beating the other party down, how could they not give it to him? Yi Chengfeng said, "That's easy for you to say. The sect master of Mingdu's cultivation isn't low. Normal immortal kings aren't his match. Moreover, to deal with one immortal king, you need to invite 4. Mingdu has 3 immortal kings. I need to invite 12. Where do you want me to find them?" Immortal kings weren't cabbages that could be found everywhere. Medium-sized sects didn't even have one immortal king. Those that had 2 or 3 immortal kings were the best amongst the medium-sized sections. Sects like the Tianqing school that had 13 immortal kings were all top sections. There weren't many of them in the entire immortal martial arts. Someone had asked the Consonance Pavilion how many immortal kings there were in the immortal martial arts. The Consonance Pavilion's answer was that they didn't have an answer. However, it was definitely less than one could imagine. Jiang Xiu leaned back with his hands behind his head. He looked up at the starry sky and said, "It's really difficult. What do you want the water tribulation for? Maybe you can use something else to replace it." The 5 heavenly water sources have different experiences, but their effects shouldn't be too different. If it's used for cultivation, they should all be replaceable. Yi Chengfeng turned to look at Jiang Xiu and said, "I don't want the dark water tribulation for cultivation, but for someone." Jiang Xiu saw a trace of hatred and killing intent in her eyes. Using the dark water tribulation to deal with someone? I'm good at killing people. Deal with who? Yi Chengfeng said word by word. Ming Yuzi. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.